Hi, everybody. We're the Skeleton Crew. I have come directly from giving a public talk at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences, which, fun fact, today was my last full day working there because I'm starting the process of moving. Yes, because my apartment, as Alex can attest, having recently been in it, is unpacked. Like it's completely, everything I own is out where it belongs instead of in a box to be brought somewhere else. But now, should I be packing tonight? Yes. But what I'm actually doing tonight is recording a DLC reaction video because a new DLC for Jurassic World Evolution 2 came out. This is apparently called the Park Manager DLC.
Park Manager Collection.
I see. That still doesn't explain why these four animals are in this DLC. That is,
they all manage parks.
I see. Okay.
Okay. That makes sense.
That's good to know. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, I'm tired and stressed, but not only am I recording this video, I'm going to edit it tomorrow. So, you guys, I hope you all watch it.
If there's a just and merciful God, this will be the last DLC for this game.
I think they're predicting one more.
Really?
Who's predicting? Who is predicting?
That's what I've heard. I don't know. I've seen people. Folks are saying it.
Many people are saying this.
Because it's not a story one?
Yeah, because it's not a story one. They think it's like kind of a weak one to end on.
We'll see. Maybe. Who knows? Should we introduce ourselves?
They know who we are. But yeah, I guess so. In case you don't know who we are. So this is normally in the video when I would say I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences and North Carolina State University. But today was my last full day working there. And so instead, I'm going to start saying a new thing. And that new thing is that I'm a research instructor at Stony Brook University's Renaissance School of Medicine. Which, yeah, I'm moving in like a few days. This is presumably the last video we'll record with this whole thing behind me.
Yeah,
which is going to be a big change for everybody, I'm sure. I gotta find a good spot in my new place to record from. Anyway, that's me.
Well, I guess next would be me because Amelia is not here. Hi, I'm Scott Johnston. I'm the vertebrate paleontology fossil preparator and technician at Harvard University's Museum of Comparative Zoology.
Well, golly. My name is Alex Rubenstahl, and I'm a PhD candidate at Yale University.
And I'm Dalton Meyer. I'm a PhD candidate at Yale University, as well as Alex is. So, what? Together.
And also with you. We're the Skeleton
Crew. The vibes are a little off kilter. We don't have Amelia, which is affecting things greatly.
Really is. And I mean, also, this video, this DLC was announced kind of super last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was kind of turned around real quick, and yeah.
We're all tired.
Amelia is going to be speaking at a commencement.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Oh, is she really?
Yeah, in Wisconsin.
We're getting really dangerously close. We've recorded for 15 straight minutes, and we have maybe 2 minutes of content so far. We're going to hit that 3 hours.
The ratio is great.
The ratio
Go. What were you going to say?
No, you go ahead. You go ahead, Dalton.
As I say, we've got 4 critters to look at in this DLC. It's an interesting assortment. And
interesting's a word.
Eclectic, maybe.
Eclectic's a better word.
Like, as a gross, I think we're eating good today in terms of what we got.
I think so too.
If the choices are in fact bizarre, which yes, they're bizarre choices, but I think we'll find we're generally eating good. But it's an odd DLC.
It is an odd DLC. It feels. I mean, I remember when Prehistoric Planet Season 2 was out, or was like freshly out. People kind of joking that the Swamps episode. I think we even said like it felt a little bit like Eclectic things that kind of didn't go anywhere else. And I feel like this DLC often also just feels like, we should put that in. Here you go. But maybe because the other DLCs are more themed.
Maybe.
Yeah. This one's just kind of things.
Right. And such wonderful things they are. Dalton, why don't you show us the first thing?
I will. So we're bookending this by size. We're starting big, we're doing the smalls, then we'll end on a big. Much as the trailer kind of did. So they finally put out like a full trailer for this DLC the day that it launched. or I guess not really a trailer, like an overview kind of video. And they described it as like, oh, you've got two very big things and two very small things. The first of the very big things is a new pterosaur. That's right, folks. For everyone who's been wanting a new pterosaur, we've got one.
And a new azhdarchid at that.
Yes. New azhdarchid. It is Thanatosdrakon. Although they pronounce it differently in the trailer. I think they say Drakon, which is not how I would...
I've always said Drakon.
I think that might be correct pronunciation.
Not
that there really is. Scientific names don't have established pronunciation, is I think a good note for our viewers who may not know. They have conventional ones, but you can't say it's, you know what I mean? When you name it, you don't provide a pronunciation as a rule, is what I mean. But I'm sorry, Scott, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say that the IPA on Wikipedia indicates that it would be Drakon.
Well, I often ignore that, and I will continue to do so.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
But
it's like I've gotten in very heated arguments with people about pronunciation of prehistoric critters' names.
Well, I remember...
Good-natured heated arguments, but still.
I remember being very annoying on Twitter for only one moment, certainly. But I was...
Never.
I know. Me? Little old me? But I was talking about how, we pronounce the P in pteryx a lot. In, wing.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we shouldn't. I sometimes, when I want to throw people off, I'll say Archaeopteryx.
You do say that sometimes, and it does throw me.
Yeah. Or the membrane-winged, possibly flying dinosaurs. I call them Scansoriopterigids, not Scansoriopterigids.
I think that's more correct.
I'm not like other guys.
I have once or twice said helicoter just to be annoying, but no, that one I don't do.
Helicopter.
I don't know. I think for me, it depends on where you naturally break it when you say it. And because we say Scansoriopterigids, I feel like there's a break there. So I feel like it's more natural to say Scansoriopterigids than deliberately saying helicoter.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
I think you should be killed by the state.
Thank you, Alex.
I think we should just reverse the rule and always pronounce the T. Pterosaurus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
We have a new pterosaur in the game. All right.
Well, should we release it?
Let's take a look at this guy.
All right. Oh,
look, they walk for a couple seconds. Yay!
That's probably the only time they do that.
I like that the one in the back pokes the second one to make it go faster. That was funny.
These are the colors on these are great. The pattern
blue and yellow.
They're stunning.
Fantastic.
I like
really
it a lot.
The red and black.
Does its neck? No, its
Good
neck doesn't
Lord,
look
what
dumb
a
either
pretty
when it perches.
pterosaur.
Yeah, it's a little
No, it
less
doesn't do the
janky.
stupid cats thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ooh.
Look
big
at that
stretch.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Oh my
right,
gosh,
pretty
dude,
good.
the body looks. Oh, this I think even as probably the biggest non-movie feathered pterosaur.
You can even take feathered out of there. It's the biggest non-movie pterosaur.
True, but in terms of viewing the body, this makes me just kind of recontextualize all the other pterosaurs. Look at their creepy little gremlin bodies. Look so much better with feathers.
Mm-hmm.
God, it's
wild.
And the wind is kind of blowing the feathers too.
I like its sleeping posture there too, with the head kind of tucked down like that.
Yeah.
This is
So do we
Wow,
think
this is stunning.
it's put its sword away.
I'm liking this more than I thought it would.
It's sheathed.
Yeah, I am too. I must confess, when I saw that it was going to be this particular animal, my initial thought was, why do we need
mine
more?
too.
Oh, I mean,
we did
my
need more,
thought,
apparently.
my thought is still why, but not because it's I don't think we need another pterosaur in the game. It's mostly, why the hell isn't this Hatzegopteryx?
Well, that's a good segue. What does its name mean?
Ah, yes.
It's a great name.
I'll take the I'll take the hat from Amelia for this.
Okay,
So Thanatosdrakon, or Drakon, if you will, means the dragon of death. And its species name is Amaru, which is in reference to an Incan, a very strange Incan deity. It's sometimes described as a serpent or a dragon thing, but it's more of a weird chimera Incan, like, griffin thing with multiple heads, with either a puma or a condor's head with a fox's muzzle, a condor's wings, snake body, and a fish's tail coated in crocodile scales.
All right, that's cool. That's pretty rad.
That is pretty cool.
I have a controversial take.
What's that?
I think the genus should have just been Amaru.
Amaru's a good name. Yeah.
Amaru is also the name of an operator in Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege, which I just realized while I was like, where do I know this name? Because I used to... Amaru in Rainbow Six Siege, which is a game that I used to play a lot. It's the initial reason I adopted a sleep schedule where I go to bed at 3 a.m., which then rapidly became the YouTube channel. Amaru is an operator. She's a Peruvian operator. And her gadget is a grappling hook that you can fire into windows to basically throw yourself through them. And you also carry a light machine gun. I had a lot of fun with this. At high levels of gameplay, this strategy is considered predictable and a bad idea. But when I was playing against people who weren't very good at the game usually. And so I would basically in the first second of the match launch myself right into the building directly onto their base and kill them all. Or be killed instantly. It always went one way or the other. This brought back a fond memory, which is a nice thing. But anyway, Amaru would have been probably a better genus name, Dalton. I agree with you.
I'm no shade to the authors because it's a really good paper that describes
it.
This.
Is.
But I just find Thanatosdrakon to be a bit of a mouthful of a name that is kind of. It's not my style, but you know.
It also
to each their own.
Insists upon itself.
It insists upon itself.
I didn't care for Thanatosdrakon.
Why is Peter Griffin a Kennedy to you?
It started Peter Griffin and then it ended Kennedy. I think this name kind of fits into a bad pattern recently where I feel like people are becoming less willing to just change words slightly to make them flow better. Like I always view it as you just put two words together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like Tyrannosaurus is not... If we were doing what we do now, we would call it Tyrannosaurus because Tyrannus is the full word. Mm-hmm. Like old school naturalists in general were very willing to kind of just use a vowel ending to transition between segments of a word.
Yeah. So like Thanatosdrakon.
I think the Thanatosdrakon would be...
Thanatosdrakon, yeah.
Yeah, it's the Thanatosdrakon that just kind of feels like it feels a little bit like you just choose the words in Greek and put them together.
It really feels like Gigant Spinosaurus.
Right.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, fine. It's fine. I mean, I don't particularly hate it. I just don't think it's particularly... it's not mellifluous, you know?
No.
Oh, someone did well on their... test.
Bad mouthfeel, as you put it, when this critter was announced.
It has bad mouthfeel, yeah. But it's a cool critter, and I mean, I haven't really looked at the paper, but it seems very well illustrated, which is a wonderful thing, yes. So on the whole, I'm very pro this paper.
It's also...
For an azhdarchid of its size, it's good material. Not a lot of skull,
incredibly.
But Scott and I were talking earlier about, because it's got this very nice teardrop-shaped skull, and we're like, oh, what's the skull based on? And it's based on, what was it, Scott?
Zhejianopteryx.
Yeah, so it's cool. It's got a like all pterodactyloids, part of the material described as a notarium, which is a cool structure. So for our slightly more anatomical-minded friends, and for those who aren't but wish to be, you might have heard of something called a synsacrum before, and this is in some dinosaurs and birds where the hips are like co-ossified with the vertebra that they're around, and some of the anterior, posterior, and they make this big, horrible monster-looking bone.
You can see this if you butcher a chicken or eat one with your bare hands in a parking lot, like God intended.
To a museum and see a Stegosaurus or something.
Right. Our viewers just pause the video, run outside looking for the nearest chicken.
What you might not know, also there are pygostyles, which are comparable but not exactly the same. What you may not know is that in both birds and pterosaurs, some of the dorsal vertebrae are co-ossified in a similar way, and this is called a notarium. Oh my goodness, pardon me. Now, it's believed, and by believed I think it's pretty well known that this is an adaptation for flight.
Yeah.
At least with an archosaurs. Bats don't have them, to my knowledge, but bats are different in a lot of ways. Now, I don't know when it shows up in birds, but in pterosaurs, it is not present in all pterosaurs. In early pterosaurs, like Rhamphorhynchids and stuff, and Agnerognathids, is actually absent, and it's not until you get to, I believe, pterodactyloids. So even the small ones, like the Tenochasmids, and once you get into the big early Cretaceous radiation, they all have this structure. So it looks like a bone cathedral. It looks like a Geiger. It's like something H.R. Geiger would make up for a painting. Mm-hmm. Just horrible webs and patterns of bone. It's a cool
that was a really fun animation. Sorry to cut you off there. No. Did you guys see that?
No, I was looking away.
Oh, one of the little guys tried to catch a fish and then threw it really up high into the air and tried to catch it again and just missed, and it bounced off his beak.
That's great. Funny.
It was really cute. I'll also say, just to add on to what Alex said there, is that I'm gonna be 100% real with you guys. This is the first time I really properly read up on what a notarium is, because I've never worked on any pterosaurs or really that much on birds. And I was kind of floored that these animals basically just were like, hey, what if we had a second sacrum, but put it in the chest? It's a thoracic sacrum.
I imagine it's helping to reinforce the trunk when you've got really heavy muscle activity, that you kind of remove flexibility.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just to rigidify the whole body, because you got the rigid back end with your sacrum, then you just make a rigid front end. Then you don't wiggle as much.
Yeah, and wiggling is bad, apparently, for planes and other flying things.
It's not dissimilar to what sauropterygians do, but what we would consider wing swimmers, or animals that fly through the water. Their gastral baskets are highly rigidified and interlocking to make. You don't want flex in that zone.
Yeah,
where your big flapping bits are. The neck, slightly more, but yeah.
Anytime I guess I'm not a physicist, but my kind of read on the situation is anytime you're using the ends of your a long appendage away from the kind of main body to generate propulsive force, you don't want that energy to then be wasted by making the body move around.
Well, it wouldn't only be that, it could disrupt the force vector if you've got the trunk flexing. Yeah. I mean, I think it's both things. Birds wind up having a lot of co-ossified elements in general, and I think that's all about kind of simplifying the loading. You don't want torsion.
Mm.
Yeah.
Torsion, it's not just for testicles.
Terrible. How dare you say that?
So,
oh my God.
Bird metatarsals fuse together, they co-ossify. And I really do think to some degree that is to prevent the possibility of, if you have a heavy landing, them moving relative to each other or twisting. So you fuse it up so they're going to hit as one unit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a cool set of anatomical features.
It is.
It looks weird though when you see it.
It looks weird, and it looks. I haven't looked at a ton of pterosaur notaria, but the Thanatosdrakon one looks even maybe a bit stranger. It's got pretty tall neural spines. It almost looks kind of hunchbacked a little bit, which I don't know if that's really reflected in this model. I guess a little bit, but
I wonder how much of that would have been covered in muscle.
Yeah,
given that area.
No, I would believe it would be kind of deep in there, and I also again don't know if that's I don't know how unique that is compared to other pterosaurs.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
Although I guess they note that notarial vertebrae with developed neural arches being the height from the neural canal to the transverse process more than twice the height of the neural spine, as a diagnostic feature of this animal. So I think they are diagnostically tall vertebrae. Oh my god, they're all sleeping, or except for this one. Bedtime for babies.
Yeah. But as we said earlier, this guy's shockingly well known for a pterosaur that I learned of its existence of 3 days ago. So there's two specimens of it. There's the holotype, which is like most of the torso or like essentially like almost everything from the neck down. Like we've got dorsals, we got the notarium, we got at least kind of like a pick and mix of right and left to complete a full wing. Most of the legs, like it's pretty good. We're just missing neck and head. And then there's a paratype, which is just a humerus.
But much bigger.
But the humerus that humerus is a much bigger. So the estimated wingspan of the holotype specimen, which is a pretty solid estimate, given that we essentially have at least one full wing from it, if you mirror things, is 7 meters, and if we scale it up to match the humerus of the paratype, it's 9 meters. So this is a slightly smaller than Ket size pterosaur.
Yeah, it's pretty significant, and they get it as sister to Quetzalcoatlus in their phylogenetic analysis. So
Yes,
that's cool.
Oh yeah.
That's cool, and they get the sister to the clade of those two species as Cryodrakon, another Drakon. Which I gotta be honest, not better fossil material, but Cryodrakon is probably a cooler name.
I
Much
like
better
that name
name.
more. It flows. It's got a better mouthfeel.
Well, right. It's not the use of Drakon, but it's not Cryostrakon, which wouldn't work as well, I think.
I agree. This guy's cool because it's from South America as well. I don't think we mentioned that. It's from Argentina.
Yeah, Argentina.
And is it the only
And from
South American azhdarchid? No.
Oh, I have no idea.
I don't think
We
so.
can look in this paper. No, because there's Aerotitan.
That's a good name, man.
There's what?
Aero Titan.
That's a great name.
Because
I've
I've
never
never heard of
of
it
it
until right now. That's also from Patagonia.
So, dear viewers, you may know what a pterosaur is. And let me tell you, like your 5-year-old cousin has told you, they're not dinosaurs. They're close relatives to dinosaurs and birds, but they are a separate group. And from the Triassic to the Cretaceous, they are abundant and cool. Well, late Triassic. Early forms, small, long tail, head, neck, ramphorincid looking. But once we get into the late Jurassic, we have the rise and diversification of the pterodactyloids, and the Thanatosdrakon is a pterodactyloid in that it has short tail, big long head, big long neck. It's also a monofenestraton, which is a cool thing where the antorbital fenestra, which you may be familiar with, that's the big hole in front of the eye, which we will be talking about soon, because foreshadowing is a narrative device. In another animal, it merges with the nares. So in more derived, in these monofenestraton pterosaurs, which are not all pterodactyloids. Actually, that goes out a little farther. It's not just all pterodactyloids. It goes out a little farther than that. But the nares and the antorbital fenestra are one opening. So how would that function? Is it all nares? I'm actually not particularly sure. I do not work on pterosaurs, but it's a cool feature. Within this, within pterodactyloids, there are many groups. There are small early things like ctenochasmids. And then there are many groups in the Cretaceous, which get quite large. We've talked a lot about pteranodons and their relatives, which are things like ornithochirids and ananguarids. And then kind of the other side of the big later Cretaceous pterosaur tree are the Neo-azhdarchids, I think the group is called, or something like this. It's a big group. It includes things like Thanatosdrakon, which is within that group a proper azhdarchid. It is in the family Azhdarchidae, which are close relatives to things like Tupuxara, I think is how it's said, and Tapijara, and more distantly related to things like Sungaripterus. Our pretty bird here, Thanatosdrakon, is very closely related to Quetzalcoatlus in that it forms a subfamily, I think, or a tribe, Quetzalcoatlini, named for Quetzalcoatlus. And that's its relationship. It looks a lot like them. Big. It's big. It's part of this end of the Cretaceous radiation of gigantic azhdarchid pterosaurs. And I think it's a shame.
In the back there, Dalton. Pause.
Oh. I think it's a shame they went extinct, because who knows what funky things would have happened to them as they continue to evolve.
Speaking of funky things.
Yeah.
Wait.
Oh,
Damn.
bonk.
Gee.
That's so cool.
That's great.
That is one dead goat.
Throws it into the... I love how it grabs it, picks it up by its feet, chucks it down on the ground hard enough to bounce, and then stabs it in the face.
Scott, how could you? It's using its feet to pick something up.
True, which is something that we might have some chaos near the end or something, or maybe even some chaos whenever, and show that these guys have a pretty gnarly human kill as well that also involves them picking them up by their feet. Oh, we're going to see it again.
Which they probably,
I think.
I mean, probably didn't do. Although how it grabbed
almost certainly. Well, no, right. Can we actually do a slow-mo the next time one kills a goat? Because now it looks like they're all killing goats.
I'm just gonna. I'm gonna say something.
Yeah.
We're not human people, human beings. Me and you and I.
Both of us together.
Our feet are highly adapted for cursoriality. Thank you. Running around, and I have, when I'm trying to be silly, will attempt to like walk around on my hands and pick something up with my feet like Sebulba. And you can do it. It's actually something you can do, and I bet you these things could, if they felt like being Sebulba, could at least hold something between their terrible, stupid intern feet for like a second.
I want to see exactly the motion they do, because also our ancestors climbed trees with our feet.
Hey, so did their ancestors.
Well, that's true.
Owned.
Can you like pause it while it's got it in its clutches?
Yeah.
It's
There's
right
one
there
happening right behind.
Yep.
It's really, they're just
a murder. It's a killing field.
What I kind of want to see is what they're actually doing with the feet, because I think the thing they couldn't do is probably the inversion of the foot.
Well,
given
let's see.
Yeah, so what they're doing is they're rotating the hips out in kind of a way they can't, and they're rotating the ankle in a way that I don't think any ornithodairan can.
Dang.
Right?
Yeah,
because like the ornithodairan ankle is like a hinge.
Mm-hmm.
So Ornithodaira, or Ava metatarsalia, these clades are basically the same. I forget the exact difference in their definition.
I think one includes aphanosaurids and the other doesn't.
Yeah.
But I might be wrong.
They're functionally very similar. And they both refer to an avian-like ankle joint, where the ankle winds up functioning like a hinge that's basically restricted to movement in one direction. Literally like a door hinge. You've got this kind of roller on the astragalus, and then a kind of flat surface that it'll articulate with. So most of the motion is like this. You can't really get sideways motion without disarticulating the ankle. It's not the very complex interplay of different carpals and tarsals the way that like more primitive reptiles and mammals have. It's kind of like a dog. Like a dog's feet are generally restricted to one plane of motion. They can't really invert their feet.
Mm-hmm.
I also think the degree of hip abduction here is unlikely. This is based on like Armida Monopsida's work that showed Archosaurs probably can't really splay their legs out quite like that.
Sad.
It's sad, yeah. So I don't think it could even do this pose. Although I would not be surprised if there was some little bit of gripping ability in the feet, just because there's no way it was like a flat paddle.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's
Right.
more that like in the human kill animation, and it's also something that we see in like Jurassic World with the pteranodons when they attack. It's very, very frequent to see pterosaurs attacking smaller prey primarily with the feet by swooping down, grabbing them. Very frequently, they kind of like give it a reversed hallux and have it grab it like a human hand, like with a thumb. And then fly up like with people. It's almost always like holding them by like the upper
By
arm,
the shoulders, yeah.
by the shoulders, and then dropping them and whatever. That's what this guy does in his human kill animation. That's what the Pteranodon does in Jurassic World. Pterosaurs could not do that. If they were picking things up, it was like barely and probably very small. And it definitely wasn't like they weren't raptors. And I don't mean that in the dinosaur way. Well, I don't mean that in that dinosaur way for all you pedants.
You can just say Alex's name. It's okay.
Me?
He's not even that pedantic.
I'm not that pedantic.
No, that's true. He's not.
Yeah,
Okay,
these guys weren't eagles and
how dare you.
hawks. Yeah, these guys weren't eagles and hawks and swooping down and grabbing prey with their feet and flying off with it. That's just not what they're built to do.
You know,
No, although it would have been cooler if they were.
It would have been cooler if they were.
maybe they wouldn't have
Have they
gotten
thought about that?
killed by some rock nerds.
They could have all flown and picked up the rock and flown it off.
I simply wouldn't have been killed by the asteroid impact.
I was built.
I would have simply handled it.
Okay, well that's
Well-
do we want to rank this and move on to our next
Yeah, why don't
animal?
we handle this thing's
I think
ranking
so.
and then move on to the next critter?
Actually, hold on. Before we do that, what formation is this thing from?
Oh, it's from a tiny little formation. I was looking at it just a minute ago.
Formation.
Yeah. It's
Is there anything
with
cool?
no. There's like 3 titanosaurs that aren't known that well.
Nodocolossus is the one that I think is the most famous,
Yeah.
and a bunch of like
There's
unreferred stuff.
yep.
Wow.
Yeah, an indeterminate abelisaur, basilsaursaur, unenlagine.
Basal Cellurosaur, you say?
Apparently, a large one.
Hmm.
According to Wikipedia. What's that mean? Speak on that. What
Interesting.
did they mean by that?
Well, no source is cited, so
As I turned to Dalton last night while we were watching the Phantom Menace, after the Trade Federation. What did George Lucas mean? No, after Jar Jar Binks jumped 12 feet into the air and dived into the lake, I turned to Dalton.
Yeah.
What did George Lucas mean by this?
What did he mean by that?
So are we going to go to species view, or we just rank them here for the
We
DLC
rank them here
videos?
for the
Okay.
DLC vids. It's too
Well,
much
Amelia's
work to
not
get
here,
the
so I
species
think
view.
I start. And I will simply say,
Well, Amelia sent her ranking.
oh, she did, right.
Yes.
She says, the bird is S for me. I love the colors. It's also S for me. This animal has completely won me over. I was kind of annoyed that they were adding like a barely known, not in terms of fossil material, but just in terms of like public notoriety, azhdarchid to the game. I wish there were a way for pterosaurs to be a little bit more integrated into the rest of the park in general. It's just something I kind of like dislike about their gameplay. And so I've never really been super hyped when there's a new pterosaur, but this one has won me over. I love it. It's beautiful. It looks probably a very reasonable amount like what a azhdarchid would have looked like, and it's cool to have in the game. So, S tier from me.
Facts.
I'm going to agree. It's stunning. I particularly really like this black coloration with kind of like the white collar on the shoulders. The pattern on the wings is beautiful. I think I'm going to echo what a lot of other people are going to say of like it's really obvious that they like an uncommon amount of care was put into this critter. Like its animations are gorgeous. Its skins are stunning. I like the sounds it makes. It's an incredibly well done animal. I do still kind of wish that it was just like had Segopteryx or something, but I don't care. Like, this is rad. This is really, really, really cool. And I'm very, very happy that it's in the game. It's definitely S tier.
Well, that just leaves me and Dalton, and I'm next in the order, so I'll say the words.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is an easy S tier. It's S for stupendous. And it just made me think that, the second game launched with basically, the same animals as the first, and there were some cool new additions, maybe 10. Oh, well, there were all the marine and flying things, but there were for dinosaurs, and Coelophysis and Cryolophosaurus, and they looked good. And I'm just thinking that the third one better launch with all these DLC animals in it.
If the pattern continues, then it will.
Because, they're good, and I like to see them. I like these. And later in this video, I'm going to talk about things that I like that aren't as accurate as this, but I like this a lot because it looks good. It looks like Mark Whitten art in the nicest way.
Yeah, and they kind of honk. They did a honk.
This is a charming critter. I defer now to my colleague and cohabitant, Dalton Meyer.
Thank you. Thank you for your deference. This is also an easy S for me. This is great. When the trailer came out and they had here's who's going to be in it. I knew this was going to be an S because you can tell just immediately that the design is excellent and it looks great. It looks so great that I went away from it because it's so much fun navigating the aviaries. It looks great. They've done an amazing job with the colors, the patterns, the design. It looks like a big azhdarchid. Like Alex said, it's like a Mark Whitten piece come to life. I like the big strap, but playing around with it, I wasn't excited for it though. I was like, this looks good. It's an S tier, but I'm not excited. Playing around with it and having it in here, the animations, its behavior, it's just really lively, and it's doing a lot of cool things. And seeing it in action has really kind of swayed me into that. I think I'm going to be including this in most of my parks when I play the game now. It's really, really good. I'll be candid and say that when they announced it, and I was discussing this in a section that may have been cut because of recording technical difficulties. My preference, and this is kind of also coming off of maybe this is the last DLC, which now we've heard maybe it isn't. But my assumption had been that this is the last DLC. And I was like, to get the last flyer, I kind of would have preferred having something that we just really didn't have before, which would have been Ramphorhynchus or maybe Microraptor or something to fill a small niche that we just don't have. So that kind of dampened my excitement, but this has really won me over, and I really like it a lot. Definite S tier.
That puts Thanatosdrakon easily up in S tier.
Woo!
Well done.
Indeed, excellent job on this one. All right, now let's get into the smalls.
Critter.
And which of the two smalls do we want to do first?
Micro, it's the smallest.
It is the smallest. So let's go from a large pterosaur to a small thing that might not be real.
A small critter.
Well,
this guy's definitely critter energy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, it's so stupid looking.
Oh, God.
They're so cute. Oh, my God.
I hate this creature so much.
I want one just to hold under each arm and just walk around with them.
I can't look away from its dumbass eyes up in its beak.
I don't care.
it's fine.
It just doesn't bother me.
It's brachycephalic. It's pugified.
A thing like this could exist.
This is a Bully XL dinosaur.
It's not.
It's Red Rum.
It's Red Rum. He's back again.
He's back. They cloned him. They did clone him.
Hey, do you want me to make you mad?
Yeah.
It's probably the most accurate ceratopsian forelimb and hand we have in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's true.
Yeah,
Doesn't make me mad. Makes me happy.
I will say this reads to me much more like an alien from Star Wars than a dinosaur design from Jurassic Park.
James, I think I'll disagree with you on something here. As somewhat of an expert on the subject, this does not read to me. This man cannot read. Look at that face.
Well, that's a fair point. Yeah, no, he can't. But you know what? I don't think if I didn't know this was supposed to be a dinosaur, I am not sure that I would be like, oh, that's a dinosaur design. I think only because I know it's in Jurassic Park, I know what it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
It looks a little bit like E.T. It looks like it belongs in Jabba's palace.
It does.
I hate when it opens its mouth. It's like a jump scare.
What's that song that the guy with the what's his name?
He's got a Jedi rocks and
maybe the Glup who sings in Jabba's palace.
is that Sice Noodles?
Which one? There's a couple.
You must be more specific.
Hold on.
Is it the furry guy or is it
the furry guy?
Okay. What's his name? Crap. What's the Yuzum's name, Alex?
Joe Yoza or something. It's Joh something.
You guys
Joe
probably
Yowza.
knew.
Joe Yowza. There we go. He sings
What? How do you spell Joe Yowza?
Joh
Yowza. Uta.
Yowza.
That's what that's what I hear when he opens his mouth.
He's a Yuzum.
You know the words, don't
No, and I can make the sounds, but I don't speak Huttese except for Dewanawanga.
Dewanawanga. He's a Yuzum, which is another sentient species from Endor. Well, from the forest moon of Endor. They share the planet with the Ewoks, and also horrible giants from a very bad series of children's films, which are sort of canon, I guess.
Oh, this is the alternate pattern.
Which series of children's films are you talking about?
The Ewok Adventures.
Oh, I've never even heard of those.
They
That's
are
animated.
Unfortunately.
not good. Yeah, sorry, that's the animated show. There's also a live-action movie.
Oh, there is, yeah.
So
isn't
I've
that
just
where,
learned from Wikipedia. Oh, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Oh, no, isn't that where blurgs were introduced, though? It's from that?
Yes, yeah, that's the introduction of blurgs, which re-entered canon in season 1, episode 19 of the Clone Wars, the invasion of Ryloth.
Stop.
It's a fun episode.
Stop.
Obi-Wan has to liberate several. Never mind. It's good. But yeah, that's where they re-entered, and then they entered the consciousness of the more casual Star Wars fan in Mandalorian Season 1, because Nick Nolte, Ugnaught character.
Besides quoting Star Wars
Wait,
chapter
is he supposed to be whatever the f*** it's called? I can't.
Oh, Yuzum? No, he's an Ugnaught.
He's an Ugnaught.
Oh, I see. I just also learned from Wikipedia that the Max Rebo band is classified as whalers.
Yeah, there we go.
Had you not known that before?
No, I didn't know that.
Okay, I knew that one.
That's because
what? Am I insane for not knowing that they're called whalers?
It's the genre of music.
That's Space Jazz, according to George Lucas.
I see. Now, I don't know if it's funnier to know that it's spelled whalers, like they're screaming about it.
It's that.
Or if they're whalers.
We're whalers on the moon.
Yeah. We're whalers on the moon.
We're whalers on Tatooine.
Out there with a harpoon, they're like, there it is.
See what happens when there's not one woman in the group? The most embarrassing Star Wars stuff.
Give us an
hey, she's the one who also was texting for a very long time asking detailed Star Wars questions.
She was. Mostly to own her boyfriend, though, which I respect.
That's true. That is true.
Which I was obliged to answer. So happy.
That still was the fastest Alex response we've ever gotten.
It was so fast.
Funny. And audience, for context, Alex a little while ago was just in Boston visiting some family, and he asks me, "Hey Scott, I'm here. You wanna hang out and do something?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, absolutely. I would love to. Where, when, what's up?" And his response was, "At Taz's." a man who I've never met or heard of before. And then I was like, what? And he disappears for 3.5 hours.
I got there, didn't I?
To which Dalton said one of the funniest things that has just now entered my lexicon as just something I say now, which is the phrase, always forthcoming with relevant information, that one.
Did I get there to watch Dinotopia with you or not?
The next day.
Yeah, that's when I was going to be there.
Yeah, but it was... You were asking about that night, but whatever. But then, so this is context for Alex. And then the other day, Amelia's like, "Hey, I'm watching Star Wars with my boyfriend, and we have Star Wars questions for the Star Wars boys." I think before the message even fully sent, Alex was like, "Yes." Like the animation hadn't fully played from it like leaving her phone, and Alex is like,
well, Alex is completely locked in. That's why you were with me, right?
Yeah, it was.
Weren't we like watching the Black Dynamite animated TV show?
Animated TV show, very good, by the way.
It's so good.
It's so good. If you watch the film and you're like, I would like more of this, that's the show.
I really like that they have recurring characters in Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger. Yeah, it's so really funny.
It's so funny. And Elvis Presley.
And Elvis Presley, that's true. And O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, and Michael Jackson. Really, it's a quality.
It's an amazing show.
Television program. I'd recommend it.
Hey, audience, can you tell we have a lot to say about Microceratus?
Oh, right.
Well, here's the thing we're not saying about Microceratus. Regardless of whether or not you think it's cute, Dalton does. I think it needs to be incinerated to be put out of its own misery. There's a reason we don't have a lot to say about it, and that's Microceratus doesn't exist.
Well,
yeah,
a fossil exists.
Well, not anymore.
Thing exists. Oh, yeah, not anymore.
Well, some of it might not anymore.
A fossil existed.
A fossil existed.
Believe it or not, at one point there was a fossil.
There was once a fossil.
The memorial of some sedimentary, like continental crust, subducted it into the mantle. A fossil existed.
So
okay, what happened?
Yeah, there was. I want you to go back in time, not to the Mesozoic.
I was about to say
to the 1950s. In 1953, Microceratops was named after some partial remains that I believe included a dentary or a maxilla, some teeth, and some postcrania. And these remains came from Asia, believe it or not. This Gobiensis might clue you into where in Asia, the Gobi Desert. Now, I say that not tremendously specifically because the paper that describes and names Microceratops is not one that I could find online after searching pretty hard for it. Now, there are hard copies available, and with enough prep time, theoretically, I could get it on loan from the library and actually know this information. Unfortunately, we did not have that kind of prep time for this. This DLC was announced very quickly. But it was named in the 1950s from fossil material that appears to have come from both Mongolia and China, the Gobi Desert of both Mongolia and China. This comes from a paper in the 1970s that kind of is cataloging new finds of ornithischians from the Gobi Desert. It seems that the initial material included bones from a locality, Chiayuquan, perhaps, Tanangku, and Sondolain Kuduk, and Shirigin Gashun. And I do apologize if I butchered those names, but they're variably from the Namek Formation and other Gobi units of this small ornithischian dinosaur from fairly fragmentary remains. So this is where we have Microceratops, and it's doing all this beautiful stuff. Then in the 1970s, so this paper from 75 that catalogs all of this material describes new material, a new specimen that was found, I believe, in Shirigan Gashun as well. And this is a partial cranium and postcranium. And this is described and referred to Microceratops in 75. And that's where things sat until Paul Sereno took a look at the material in 1999 or 2000. I think the paper says 2000, but obviously we would have been looking at this material in the late 90s. And there's this partial skull and postcrania, which is illustrated in the Sereno paper, but is actually there's plates of it. There's photographs in the paper from the 70s. It's decent. It's not terrible material. But Paul Sereno takes a look at this and he says this is not referable diagnostically to Microceratops, and in fact, Microceratops doesn't seem to be diagnostic at all. So the text from Sereno's paper reads as follows. Microceratops, Bolin, 1953, erected a new genus, Microceratops, with 2 new species on the basis of teeth, fragmentary jaws, and assorted postcrania, much of which he believed to be from immature individuals. This fragmentary material came from 2 localities in different horizons in Gansu province, China, the ages of which remain uncertain. Some of it is diagnosed by ridges in the dentary teeth that actually seem to be variable within things like Protoceratops and Psittacosaurus, I think. And some of the material has potentially been lost of that original holotype material. Like that's discussed in even the paper in the 70s. I think by the 70s, some of the material, let me just double check that. I think some of the material had been lost. So I think some of the jaw material was lost.
Well, I think the holotype in particular is what was lost.
But in any case, Paul Sereno says, hey, this Microceratops is not diagnostic. And this material, the better cranial material, is not referable to it. So Microceratops is a nomen dubium, and we're going to name this new material Graciloceratops. And that is really what we're looking at in the game, is the material of Graciloceratops. Now, you might be saying, well, Dalton, you've been saying Microceratops a lot and not Microceratus. What's the deal with that? Well, that is there was a paper in 2008 that handled the nomenclature of a couple different goby ornithischians. And surprise, surprise, Microceratops was preoccupied by an insect, a wasp, in fact. And so in 2008, because while Sereno said, hey, this is a nomen dubium, some authors have continued to use Microceratops and continued to refer that original material to it. So just for the sake of having something that isn't breaking the rules, they're like, we're going to rename this so it's not preoccupied by the wasp from Microceratops to Microceratus, which is what we've got here, even though this is just Graciloceratops. And there we have it, folks, a potentially dubious, probably dubious, renamed genus that is not what the material that the design is based off of.
So,
confused?
I have a little question. Oh, yes. I can add a clarifying thing, which is adding more confusion, which is, in doing a little bit of looking into it, it looks like the name Microceratops is no longer a species of wasp.
Oh no! What is it now?
It's a junior synonym of a wasp. That it was of the genus Neopimpala. It's an ichneumon wasp, and its junior synonym is it was also called Microceratops. So, okay, does this further confuse things of like, if you name something a thing and it turns out, oh, bad luck, that name's taken, and then that name becomes untaken, can you just call it that?
No.
Oh.
Well, kind of, but kind of not. So that would invoke a couple different things that can happen potentially, which I was involved in a situation where this was relevant, so I know a bit about what the procedure is, which is that, Microceratops, while it is a junior synonym of that wasp, it is still considered a name of that wasp, and it is still considered taken.
Okay.
Now, if there had been no action done to change the name of the dinosaur from Microceratops, if Microceratus hadn't been published, after 50 years, if no one had used the name of the wasp, if it had appeared in no literature for 50 years, and Microceratops the dinosaur had appeared in literature over those preceding 50 years, then you could make a case for the name to be removed from the wasp and applied to the dinosaur. There are rules in place for that. I don't remember if that's something that just happens automatically or if that's something you have to petition the ICZN for. But it is possible.
I think ICZN, I believe they will at least issue an official ruling. They call it a nomen oblatum, which is Latin for a forgotten name.
So there's a lot.
And I don't know. I don't know if you have to petition it or if they if you just kind of mention to them like, "Hey, this is the case."
Wait,
I
don't
think
go
it
back to
just
that
give
last
it-
one. I think it was going to do the social animation.
Oh, I think you might just be able to publish it and be like, "Hey, this is what happened." I don't know that you have to petition because the ICCN has what they call plenary power to do things. I don't think you need to invoke that in this case. Oh, that's very cute.
Right.
But it's a long answer to kind of, Scott. I think there could have been
Okay.
a world in which Microceratops was kept as the name of the dinosaur, but that's no longer the world we live in. We diverged from that timeline in 2008.
We did. And just a brief note for those for taxonomy heads in the audience. The principle here is the principle of availability as a name, which as a younger person, and by a younger person, I mean until a couple of weeks ago when I actually learned what this stuff means. I always thought available meant this is a name you can give to something. The name is available.
Mm-hmm.
What availability means is that this is a name that has been applied to something. And it's available for reference is the way that I think you can think of it.
It's a very...
It's a weird phrasing. Yeah.
I'm going to make a controversial statement. I think that the vocabulary of the Code of Zoologic Nomenclature is very bad. And I think it's written pretty poorly and almost intentionally done to obfuscate people from understanding it. And I think a lot of mistakes that occur that then need rectified are from the fact that it's so just I don't know, I'm trying to think of the right word to use for it. It was put together with care, obviously, but the people who aren't involved in its construction, I think should have been more involved in its creation because it's tricky to parse.
Yeah, it's not the most clear.
It's almost like legalese.
Yes, it's very legalese. But I mean, availability. I guess if we're doing this, I should quote directly from.
Please do, yeah.
Yeah, I should read from the good book. Okay, a name is available and takes authorship and date only when it has satisfied the provisions of this article and when relevant of Articles 11 and 20, which are other provisions here. And the provisions are... What are the provisions? Father, my provisions.
Please provision me.
I need you to make food available. Which in this case does not mean that you can have the food, but that there is food to be had.
Available is just such a poor word to use.
I mean, I do also wonder if it may be an old holdover. This vocabulary, at least goes back to the 50s. Mm-hmm. I don't remember exactly when ICCN was created, but it may be I saw a thing on Twitter today talking about how words in English that mean something is very something just kind of usually wind up meaning that it's good. Awesome or terrible or terrific.
Mm-hmm.
It might be nomenclatural or maybe vocabulary drift. So to be available, the name has to have been published. It has to use the Latin alphabet. It needs to be derived from a language or be formed as a word. So it has to be pronounceable.
Not just sounds.
It has to be valid when proposed. Or treated as valid as proposed. It has to, even if it's not the right name, it needs to be that you were considering it the right name to use for something.
Mm-hmm.
It is. There are a lot of provisions here. I'm not gonna read them everywhere. This is an interesting one. Deliberate employment of misidentification. If an author employs a specific or subspecific name for the type species of a new nominal genus group taxon, but deliberately in the sense of a previous misidentification of it, then the author's employment of the name is deemed to denote a new nominal species, and the specific name is available with its own author and date, as though it were newly proposed in combination with the new genus group name.
My eyes are glazing over.
So, example, Leach, 1817, when establishing the nominal genus Plea, Heteroptera, fixed Nodonecta minutissima as the type species by monotypy, but he expressly employed the name Nodonecta minutissima in the sense of misidentification used by Gregory in Fourcroy, 1785, and other authors, and not in the taxonomic sense of Linnaeus, 1758, the original author of the binomen. By that act, Leach is deemed to have established the new nominal species Plea minutissima for the taxon actually involved, and to have fixed this and not Nodonecta minutissima as the type species of Plea. I hope that the next time one of us gives something the wrong name, you cut us a little slack, because there's a lot of pages of this.
It is a document with a valiant purpose that I think is in desperate need of a revision and a condensing to make more useful, to the point where there was just a recent paper that came out of like, hey, here are like many mistakes people make, and here's how you can avoid them. And it's like, it's good that someone wrote that, but maybe we should just make a new edition of the code that's easier to use.
Yeah, I think that would be an okay thing to do. Listen, there's a lot of systems in general. This is not a paleo thing. This is just a thing I think about where, like, we learn what the barrier to entry is, and making something very complicated or difficult to access usually doesn't stop people from trying to do the thing they were doing. It just makes them less likely to engage with it. Yeah, I mean, like, the example I always think about is, like, streaming movies. Like, the movie piracy market died. I mean, it didn't die. Like, obviously, piracy still exists, but like the onset of streaming meant that there was way fewer demand, or way less demand for torrenting movies and music. Like,
coming back.
It's coming back now. I saw they're bundling what, Apple TV, Netflix, and Paramount Plus or something.
Cable. It's cable 2.0
under Comcast.
Yeah, it's cable, but they don't have to pay residuals.
See,
right.
Capitalism innovates and creates new good things. It's not just a cycle of selling you the same old thing, but worse.
This is there's good and there's not good. This is not good. This is anyway. But yeah, like what?
I'm sorry. How many times did you say that during Aliens?
A lot.
When things would happen, when plot developments would happen, he would turn to me. He would say, "There's good, there's not good.
This is not good."
He enjoyed the film, to be clear. He was inhabiting the characters.
Yeah, it's probably how I'm going to respond if I'm ever in like a nearly fatal accident. Like they'll be pulling the piece of rebar out of my chest. They'll say like, "Sir, how are you?" And I'll say, "Well, there's good and there's not good. This is not good." Anyway, I just think I agree with Dalton. I think the ICCN would probably be engaged with more if the language were a little less opaque, because it can.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah. I mean, it's dense and it's hard to get through. But yes, availability I think should be considered more in the sense that it is available to other researchers as a name that exists, not that it's a name you can use to put on something, if that makes sense. I mean, I think the example that helped me actually understand it is when I read, because like Deinonychus was named by John Ostrom in 2 papers. And the first one is very short, and it came out like earlier in the year than the second one. Yeah. And he expressly says in the beginning of the short paper, he says, like, I am working on a long study of this, but I found out that another team is working on like Dromaeosaurus material in the AMNH. And because they need to reference my specimen, I'm publishing this very short preliminary note so that the name will be available.
Oh, that does help.
Right. And so, like, I realized I was like, oh, okay. Right. What he's saying is not that it's available for me, but so that it will be available to them to reference the name.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Which I think helps quite a bit.
It does.
Yeah. Anyway, but it's
so
not
in
an available
referencing
name.
this thing's name, this is Microceratus, an animal that we've basically not talked about for the last
There's
20
nothing
minutes.
to say. It's a nomen dubium. The
I
only
can say that its name means small horn, and its species name means from the Gobi.
yeah, but its actual name is apparently Gobiceratops, right?
No,
Graciloceratops. Sorry,
Graciloceratops.
there was also a Gobiceratops, I think.
There is a Gobiceratops as well.
Yes, Graciloceratops mongoliensis. I think.
Mongoliensis. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
guess what that one means, kids? Pause the video here. Send in your guess.
Mail us your guesses.
It
Dial in
means
your vote.
Slenderhorn.
From Mongolia.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that's one I think I'm familiar with.
Yeah, so I think there's just a point to be made here. There is one other thing that could have been done by Paul Sereno, but it would have involved more paperwork.
A neotyping
there.
He could have made Graciloceratops the neotype of Microceratus or Microceratops and kept the name.
Yeah.
Which sorry, go ahead.
It was the 90s. He was busy. He had a lot of cool stuff to describe from Gondwana.
Like, I think a lot of people operate under the assumption that if something is a nomen dubium, like if the material is not diagnostic, you have to dump the name. You can dump the name, but you need not. Because you could also petition the ICZN and say, the material that it's based on is not diagnostic, therefore we want to erect a neotype. I think that in cases where it's a taxon that is well studied, that is very important because many things named in like the Martian Cope generation are based on really bad holotypes.
Yeah.
Allosaurus is maybe the poster child. It was like a couple of very damaged caudal vertebrae.
Oh, yeah.
That are, they're barely recognizable as theropod, let alone like diagnostic for Allosaurus.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, and this may be an unpopular opinion, I think it would have been disastrously destabilizing to lose the name Allosaurus as a categorization for that stuff and made the literature much more confusing than what was done, which is that, and it's now official, thank God, but the Smithsonian specimen, which is on display there and is very complete, which has been used as the de facto reference for Allosaurus for a long time, was made a neotype.
Yeah.
That was recently, right?
Very
Well, it was only recently accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is kind of
for a
the
long
problem.
time, right?
Well, yeah, the problem is that ICZN often takes a while to deliberate on these cases, and so you wind up, the fastest thing is to dump the name.
At least, well, I have to say, at least they're. Sorry, I was distracted by all the messages coming in. If they're that opaque, at least they're also slow.
Yes, I do think that the speed is a bit more understandable because it's nobody's full-time job to be like ICZN ombudsman or whatever the title might be.
Right. They're adding that new name for your ship to Helldivers 2. Ombudsman of ICZN.
My ship is the Ombudsman of Wrath, for those who are curious. I love the name. I love the name Ombudsman.
Oh, mine's the Mother of Law.
I like that. I am very happy that I realized I could make mine the paragon of individual merit.
Mine was before the Mother of Law. It was the Patriot of Patriotism.
That's also really good.
I do like that a lot.
Anyway,
okay.
Yeah, Microceratops.
What on earth can we say about this guy? Well, okay, so I will say
phylogeny for Graciloceratops.
Yeah, but I will say that we've been saying for a while that we want more different body plans and more different types of dinosaurs in the game, and we got one. Like, we got a small early ceratopsian. These guys were really weird. They're kind of gross looking, even in the best of times. Mm-hmm. And this guy's no different. Now, James has worked on some kind of gross looking early ceratopsians. He even named one.
Yeah. And its name is available because I adhere to the letter of the law. Yes, I used to work on Psittacosaurus. I named a new species of Psittacosaurus. I haven't really worked on the animal since then. But yeah, you get these really interesting little guys. They're all primitively bipedal because they're ornithischians, and dinosaurs in general are primitively bipedal. One of the first signs you get that you're on the ceratopsian lineage is the development of a rostral bone at the front of the snout. This is a neomorphic ossification, which is science speak for this is literally a new bone. So it's a midline element that forms a beak. So ceratopsians have one more beak in their skull, one more bone in their skull than every other ornithischian. And ornithischians they're double beaked up on a Thursday afternoon. Hella beak. And ornithischians in general have another bone than most reptiles because they have a predenerinated lower jaw, which is another midline beak element. So the rostral's kind of complementing that. Graciloceratops, Alex, is more advanced than Psittacosaurus, right? Which is perhaps evident by the fact that
it's kind of part of the paraphyletic, not even paraphyletic because I don't think it's official name, but there's a bunch of things that kind of grade up into leptoceratopsians, protoceratopsids, and ceratopsids proper. I think that group's called Coronosauria, which is not a bad name.
Crown lizards.
Oh,
yeah,
that's a really good
name.
Like Jimbo said, there are Psittacosaurs, which I think are the most primitive, or nearly, and then there are like things like Yinlong. So there are ceratopsians in the late Jurassic for viewer. They look something like this. They're bipedal, they're small, and they have even less developed kind of frills than this. That marginocephalia only early. It's things like Yinlong, Hulianceratops too. But I think those have I can't remember. They may in fact be a little more derived than Psittacosaurs, but I'm not sure. Anyway, early bipedal, like Jimbo said, and then kind of in the early Cretaceous, we have this grade of things like a lot of it's pretty fragmentary. Things like Aquilops, Liaoceratops, which is very nice.
Aquilops is pretty good.
Is Aquilops pretty good?
Well, it's part of a head.
Okay, that's not bad. Liaoceratops, which is a beautiful complete skull. And yeah, these are mostly small bipeds. I think some may have evolved quadrupedality on their own. There's also Coreoceratops, which I've seen proposed to be semi-aquatic because it has a big, tall, narrow spines on the tail. I don't know about that.
As actually does Protoceratops.
Oh yeah, it does.
Yeah,
it's kind of got a frill, a hump.
Protoceratops was definitely semi-aquatic, living in a barren wasteland
this is
desert.
In that zone, and the shape is right in that zone. Mm-hmm. The only thing that's not. So I'm trying to figure out where the eye is a little far forward. You may have seen, if you're a paleo person, you may have seen people saying, hey, the eye is in the wrong hole. It's in the antorbital fenestra. To this I say, I ask you, viewer, to Google a skull of a ceratopsian right now. There is very little antorbital fenestra to put anything in. They're pretty reduced. In part because the nares, so the nose holes at the front of the skull in ceratopsians get really big. So in something like Triceratops, if you were to Google, hold on, now I kind of want to find a bit. If you look up a ceratopsian, look up your favorite ceratopsian. Look up Triceratops right now. Is everyone doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm doing it. Because I want to make sure I'm right. Because I'm a coward. Yeah, look at that. You see that big horrible thing in the front of their face? That's their nose. Can you see the antorbital fenestra?
No.
God knows I can't. I think it's a tiny little hole, right?
I mean, I think it's considered lost.
I'm looking at a skull right now that it looks like there's a small little. No, yeah, this is like.
I mean, it's Taxosaurus at the very least. It is lost. It's closed.
LF. Mm-hmm. Oh, maybe that's a lacrimal fenestra or something?
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, the antorbital fenestra closes in ceratopsians.
Pretty early, too.
In early things, it's still present. So I think hold on, is it in Liaoceratops or is it just lost?
Well, I'm looking at Begsea right now, which Yeah.
Okay, so it is in Liaoceratops, it looks like. Still.
Tiny, yeah.
But very small. So yeah, like we said, in these early ceratopsians, it would be heavily reduced. And so in defense of the design, it's not really in the antorbital fenestra. It's a little anterior to the orbit than maybe the ones we know would be. That kind of...
Keep in mind, we don't have this region of the skull for Gracilloceratops.
Yes, there's kind of this empty space you can see behind the eye as this guy moves, and you can't see where the lateral temporal fenestra is. So if you remember, all reptiles are diapsids. That means they have two skull fenestrations, top and side, lateral and dorsal. And really, this guy's eye is like, it's a little far forward. It's fine. It's a little goofy. It's fine. It should be a little farther back. It would look a little less silly if it were a little farther back, but I'm not particularly bothered by it.
The eye's also just very large.
It is huge.
And another feature that this guy has, or well, rather doesn't have, that I keep getting reminded of every time I like see it walking around, I'm like, oh, it's cute. And then it opens its stupid mouth. Oh God, it should have cheeks. I hate that it doesn't. I hate that it's the only ceratopsian in the game that doesn't. It's gross.
Well, we don't know if ceratopsians had cheeks, young man.
But they do look better when they have them.
But they do look nicer.
But they should.
And they definitely did, because they've
its head looks like a Pez dispenser.
It
it's so unnaturally jointed.
No, it's... Well, actually, these wouldn't have dental batteries. I think their dentition was still pretty primitive. That's another thing that happens in ceratopsians. The phylogenum section is over. Do we want to rank it?
Well, I have one quick question
about
it, because this guy actually does do kind of a facultative quadrupedal thing when he grazes or drinks.
Yeah.
He eats a single blade of grass because they're
when
all
he
bigger
eats
than him.
A single blade of grass, yes. So at what point do ceratopsians start evolving quadrupedality?
I mean, that includes proto, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to say proto is, I think, the most basal of them that would be like considered a quadruped. Like definitively.
If there's there might be some early stuff that's like big that might be getting down on all fours, but I think it's really I think it's restricted to protoceratopsids and ceratopsoids or ceratopsids, things like Zuniceratops. Once you get up there, there are leptoceratops, which are closely related to them, more closely related to them than things like this guy. But those are also, I think, all bipeds. So probably, yeah.
Oh, well, never mind. Actually, I don't know how much of Eudanoceratops is known beyond just the skull.
Isn't Eudanoceratops closely related to Protoceratops?
Proto, I believe so.
I'm seeing it as a leptoceratopsid.
It is.
Okay, that'd be interesting.
It's a leptoceratopsid.
It's always reconstructed as a quadruped, but looking at the bones that are available, I wonder if that's just because it's big.
It is big.
I think it's almost certainly a quadruped. I think with so it's probably like leptos. Maybe leptos are facultative. I don't really know. I feel like leptos could be facultative. But yeah, coronosaurs are like definitively quadrupedal. And I think there's an argument to be made that they're essentially like getting quadrupedal just because of head size. Right? Like, your center of gravity is going to change to a point where you need to come down. These animals like Microceratus, like Aurora-ceratops, all these guys, like, they've got fairly small heads relative to body size.
Yeah.
I think, I think Eudanoceratops in particular must have been a quadruped.
Speaking of, God, I hate Eudanoceratops.
It's horrible.
It's a horrible monster.
Awful animal. It gives me Dicynodon energy. It's pretty
Pretty cool, you
It
mean?
is-
It's a terrifying creature.
Why don't we rank this guy?
Let's rank it. Let's rank it and stank it.
Amelia has ranked it D, standing for I want to drop kick it.
I respect
I'll
that.
never understand. You haters.
No, I'm also going to go with D tier on this. It is just I don't there. It's not ugly cute to me. It's just ugly. It's hitting something. It looks so I don't know. It looks like not a biological living thing to me. It looks like a toy. It looks like a poorly made toy. This isn't the designer in the game's fault. Obviously, this is a character design from the movie. But it reminds me of Red Rum a little bit. And I don't like that.
Oh, that's...
I will be kinder than my previous hosts here, but not by a huge amount. I think I'll give him a C. I definitely do not dislike it as much as everything that we have in D. It really is I like it. I start liking it more and more and more, and then it opens its mouth and looks like a Canadian from South Park, and I just go, oh no, just gross. The eyes being so forward does really bug me. It really does feel like they gave this thing the wrong sounds in the game. Instead of these cute little chirps and squeaks and stuff like that, it should be having labored, awful, breathing like a pug, where it'd just be instead of actually seeing it walking around and hearing it little squeak and stuff, you just hear a coming from a bush, and it's like, oh, the Microceratus is here. It's just so yeah, I'll give it a C. I'm warming up to it a little bit more, and I would be okay with it being in B, but personally I'm giving it a C. I like that it's in the game though.
This is a C. For most of the reasons Scott said. I don't hate it. I find it silly, and I like the shape is something we haven't had. I grant him a C for ceratopsian.
When God's children sing, will not Microceratus be part of the choir? This is a baby. This is a baby who's done nothing to nobody. Why has he hurt you all so? I don't understand. He's adorable. It's so cute. I love it in the movie. It looks weird, I'll admit, but I love it. It's a little puppet, and he kind of jerks and is just kind of afraid, and it's so cute. I love this guy. He's just adorable, and he's small, and he's great, and the eye is too far forward, and I can't deny that. Well, it's probably too far forward, because we don't have that part of the skull. We have no reason to suspect it would be that far forward. I like it. It's cute. It makes me happy. I'm going to give it an A because I like it and it makes me happy.
And we respect your answer.
It's not an S. The cheeks are weird, and it is. I don't like when it opens its mouth. It's a good baby with a closed mouth. It's a little monster when it opens its mouth, but it's fun. It's an A.
So I guess an A, 2 C's, and 2 D's. That puts Microceratus in C tier.
Woo!
All right, well, now we've talked about Microceratus. Let's talk about Segisaurus.
Segisaurus.
That sounds like so much of a cooler name than it
Is it
actually
Segisaurus?
It's
I've
Segisaurus.
always said Segi, but I don't know.
I've always said Segisaurus. I don't
I've always
know.
heard Segi or Segisaurus, not Segisaurus.
All right,
It
it's-
sounds like
Segisaurus.
Well, it
eating
is
the
named
sea.
after Segi Canyon, or Segi.
So-
I don't know if it's Segi or Segi, but it's definitely not Segi based on how it's
I don't
pronounced
give a
or spelled.
Who
That's a
cares?
fair point. Whatever it is, let's let it out.
Let's let it out indeed. It's huge.
All right. Ooh.
oh my god.
Look at the purple.
I like
Wow.
the colors though.
Ooh, some of those patterns are really good.
Yeah.
You know what these guys give, especially the spotted leopard one that came out in the front, which you should go to because it's the prettiest one.
Oh, that's really nice.
These they're little guys, they're mysterious, they're colorful. They give mechanical elf vibes.
I see.
We've gotten to it, folks. The part of the video that I warned my friends about earlier, which is where I talk about the mechanical elves.
This is, Alex, this is like a Joe Rogan podcast episode, just the complete non sequitur. So have you ever done DMT?
James.
I have not, actually.
Oh, that's cute.
They're very good. I like them a lot.
I like them too.
Now, some people, I think, are like, oh, they're kind of boring. I'm like, I don't think they're boring. It's a primitive theropod, which I like to see. So the featherlessness is less
glaring.
I mean, I personally think that an animal like Segisaurus would probably have had some kind of filamentous integument. But, it's living in a desert maybe, so maybe it doesn't. It's pretty. I like its size. It's a good size. I like small animals. I kind of hope, frankly, for the next Jurassic World game, which I hope this animal will be in because I hope they have all the DLC animals. Something I would like to see is like small enclosure editing.
Yeah.
So like you could maybe make a little enclosure that would be, or just finer detailing tools, so you could make something nicer for like having just like 3 or 4 little Segisaurus hanging out. But it's a good retro dinosaur design. I've been trying to look at the hands to see how many fingers they have.
Ooh.
3.
Okay, well, this is a coelophysoid. I don't know how we want to do this. Do we want to start with phylogeny?
Why don't you go ahead? We're already there.
Go for it.
So, Segisaurus is a cute little dude. And we haven't actually... Would we have talked about a theropod again recently? We did a This is after a Troceraptor or before a Troceraptor?
No, Troceraptor won't come out till after this.
We've recorded a Troceraptor, and all of our audience knows that we've recorded a Troceraptor.
Cool.
But the Troceraptor is coming out next week.
Well, okay, then never mind. Well, no, then it's still true. Okay, so beloved audience, we have not talked about a theropod in a little while, so I'm excited to talk about this little theropod. And this is a theropod from a part of the tree where we have rather sparse sampling in this game. This is a coelophysid, in that it belongs to the family Coelophysidae. So what does that mean? Well, within theropods, and these are the bipedal meat-eating dinosaurs that are traditionally and usually found to be within the group Saurischia, along with sauropods. Theropods are the beast foots. That's what the name means, even though it would make infinitely more sense if they were called bird foot. But whatever, who cares?
Really would.
And there are a few divisions therein. There are so kind of the really early things. Maybe Herrerasaurids, which we've talked about before. Have we talked about Herrerasaurs yet?
No,
Yes.
I don't think we really have.
Yes, we did Herrerasaurus.
Okay.
We did?
Yes,
Yeah,
I was
I think maybe you
in
were not there.
Brazil at the time.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh, right. Okay. Herrerasaurs, maybe not early theropods. Maybe they're early Saurischians. Things like Tawa, Daemonosaurus, maybe. There are a bunch of these really early diverging probably theropods. And then there are what we call neotheropods. And neotheropods include the most primitive branch of what we call Neotheropoda is coelophysoids. And so this includes things like Lillensternus, which is a relatively large European one, Pangoraptor, Procompsognathus, Coelophysis, which we've already talked about, and Segisaurus. And Segisaurus is pretty closely related to Coelophysis. So you can see in the model a lot of those kind of nice primitive coelophysoid features, which is long neck, long tail, kind of this long tubular body. In later theropods, the body becomes pretty short. which is a birdie thing. And this far down the theropod tree is pretty cool because a lot of the more obviously avian features that we associate with birds and, the theropod bird connection aren't as obvious now at this point. But what is obvious is that I think this is one of the most primitive dinosaurs for which we know we have a wishbone.
Yep.
A furcula. It's and I don't think it was recognized as a furcula when the specimen was described. Otherwise, because I think this was, what year was this?
36.
Yeah.
1936.
Pretty sure.
Well, it was recognized as a clavicle, though, which
Yes, they call it clavicle.
which
so close.
Well, not only so close, should have also clued people in on something.
Yeah, it's not a great skeleton. It's like a partial pectoral girdle, so there's shoulders, an arm, and some tail vertebrae, and I think some legs. No.
No, I was saying now. I thought I was going to make a point, but you can finish yours. Sorry.
Oh, just so it's not as complete as something like coelophysis. And I guess we began this segment with me saying, oh, they only have 3 fingers, and I guess I should say that coelophysis and other early theropods, including ceratosaurs, have 4. This is something that is lost in tetanurans, but some cool work on coelophysis has shown that the actual hands of coelophysis bauri appear to have some level of interspecific variation. What did I say? Did I say the right thing?
Intra. You said intra.
Thank you. Intraspecific variation. My goodness. In the development and number of phalanges, but I'm not sure about the actual number of fingers. So unclear. It's also at that point in the tree pretty primitive, so that's stuff that might be fairly plastic character-wise. Maybe that it's just locking in. There are a few weird cases of this possibly in non-tetanuran theropods. Limosaurus is actually another interesting example of weird hand stuff happening. But anyway, primitive theropods. These guys would be all over the place from the late Triassic into the early Jurassic, and then they're all dead by the end of the early Jurassic for some reason. Changing conditions.
This is another one. Oh, what you said? Sorry.
No, I'm good.
Okay. This is another one for which the descriptive paper is not easily accessible online, unfortunately. And another one that I did find would be available in the library had I had time to get it.
Wait, I have the PDF of the redescription.
Well, I have the redescription, but I want the 1936 paper.
Oh, I see. Right, that's the one.
Because there's a bit in the Wikipedia that I desperately want to read firsthand to like see if I can get some clarity on, which is that so Charles Camp described this, which Camp holds a special place in my heart because Camp published one of the first kind of seminal works on the classification of lizards as part of his thesis. I think as his thesis, pretty much. But Camp described it and apparently speculated that these splint-like neck ribs supported a Draco-like patagium along the neck to improve the animal's ability to move quickly. And I really want to read that like in the paper because I want to know what did he mean by that?
What did George mean by this? There are, dear viewer, in an earlier video, we said you should read the literature and read papers because it's a good way to educate yourself. You should also read old paleontological papers because sometimes there's some just wild stuff in there. Like,
oh yeah,
the authors will be like, on a project I'm working on right now, a famous paleontologist found some tail vertebra from something and a neck vertebra, and then was like, this was a quadrupedal arboreal animal. It had legs longer than its arms longer than its legs, and it lived in the trees. I'm not going to tell you what animal this is, but they found more bones literally the next year, and he was just like, nah, never mind, I was wrong.
Well, it's like another great example of this that we could talk a little bit more specifically about because it's not something that any of us are actively working on is the little existential crisis that you, Alex, went on during the homalocephalae video when we talked about its live birth, its childbearing hips.
Yeah.
That, like, sometimes old school paleontologists, they just be saying things.
Yeah, it was kind of wild. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, Dalton. I will say, like, if you can track down the copy of that, I'm so curious.
I'll see what I can do, because I think we have a copy of it, like a physical one, in our library. So it wouldn't have to be like a loan. It just had to be like someone has to go get it for me, because it's not part of the library you can just walk in and borrow from. So I'll see what I can do, because I'm immensely curious about this. Obviously, it didn't have a Draco like patagium on its neck.
Cool, it did though.
It would be cool.
Ooh, actually, a quick question, because this guy is a coelophysoid. Does this guy have coelophysoid teeth? As in, does he actually have the wrong teeth for every other theropod in the game, in that they go under the orbit? But it would be correct for a coelophysoid.
Let's see. Open your mouth. When you go to the food, maybe there's
time to go to the dentist.
They put their whole bodies in the feeder, so I'm not sure if you'd be able to see it. Just
Could
wait for one of them to
be.
scream.
This one might be. Oh, here we go.
Oh, yay.
I got it engaged.
It's hard to tell.
And maybe go on the other side in the sun.
They gave it. It's got some lips.
Oh, I hate the controls for this thing so much.
I'm going to make frickin' lose it.
I'm going to have a conniption. Oh my god.
The answer might be it's not worth their sanity.
Yeah, it might not.
It's not worth the time, because it is, as I've just learned, 12:15 a.m. and we still need to do Megalodon.
I think they might stop a little bit before.
They shouldn't.
Yeah. Well, we don't have a head of it, so we don't know for sure.
Fair.
Sure.
No, but yeah, it should.
So one of the things I was a little bit surprised about when this guy came out of that hatchery is I didn't expect him to be this damn tiny.
Yeah, he's very small.
Yes, it's a little guy.
Like baby.
It's basically a cat.
Yeah. Well, according to the read description, it's not done growing. It doesn't have an EFS. They propose it's a paper by Matt Carano and others. John Hutcherson and Scott Sampson as well. There's only 3 of them. I could list everybody. In the paper, they mention a couple things. They mention one, that it doesn't have an EFS, but it seems to be like it's not a baby. It's a subadult. And 2, they kind of have an offhand reference that one potential complication is that the skeleton seems to be of a, quote, robust morph common to basal theropods. And that is the only time they mention that in the paper, and then reference that to Rowe and Gunther 1990, which is a book.
I'm sorry, Scott. That's Gaudier, as in Jacques Gaudier.
Can't read.
I've
never seen it written.
I know.
Seen it written.
I was looking at the sentence as you said, and I was like, "Oh, I want to see how he says this."
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Jimbo's just being mean to you.
No, I'm sorry.
No, it's.
Do you have the French Jacques Gaudier or the German Johann Gunther?
Jacques Gaudier, the financier,
the famed French explorer.
Jacques, I'm so sorry.
I don't think Jacques watches our videos.
No, Jacques, loyal viewer of our channel. I'm so sorry.
Now,
So it references this book, and I didn't know that there was a common, like, robust morph of early theropods. I wanted to read more into that, but I do not have this book.
now,
And it's just called Ceratosauria, so it's hard to Google.
well,
go on,
that's
sorry.
actually interesting because that refers to a time in history where coelophysoids and ceratosaurs were grouped into a primitive clade together. Interesting. Additionally, I think Chris Griffin, our friend,
Yes.
has shown in some histological work that the growth of early theropods like this was not as, what's the word I want to use?
It's not canalized.
It's not exactly. It's not canalized in the same way it is later on in theropods, in that you can have, like, there are adult-sized coelophysoids, like the same size as members of the population that have that evidence that they're done growing, that have open sutures between their neural arch and centra, and also I think that might even lack ESR. I'd have to double check that, but apparently it's so early in theropod evolution that kind of avian growth rate is apparently not locked in.
There is even more ambiguity here.
Mm-hmm.
Please.
I won't elaborate, though.
Okay.
No, I will, but I'm trying to find the reference to make sure I don't cite this wrong.
So, Scott, I'm saying to you, it is possible that this could be a near adult size for the animal,
Yeah, that's fair.
or maybe not. We don't know.
Yeah. Like, in the paper, they definitely, like, make a point to say, like, this thing is not, like, incredibly small as to how it would be when it was fully grown. They just say, like, it.
Mm-hmm.
It was. They just say, like, basically it wasn't an adult.
Well, right. Although,
And
sorry, Scott, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
I do also want to say, like, I am curious about the robust morph thing, because, like, are they also saying it's a male? I guess ?
I
Which
think
is
what
hard
they're
to say
saying
with
is,
one.
I don't have that chapter of the Dinosauria available to me right now. I will. It might. I have the second edition. They're referencing the first edition of the Dinosauria. But I will check to see if there's anything in it tomorrow when I edit this video in a fugue state.
I have the first edition of the Dinosauria.
Oh, so, well, actually, you'll do it.
So, James, what were you going to say about growth and stuff?
Well, like, one of the other growth things that is commonly cited that's referenced here is, like, neurocentral suture fusion in the vertebrae.
Mm-hmm.
So, when animals are born, or when reptiles are born generally, when they hatch, so a vertebra has two parts, to take it further back. Generally speaking, you can divide a vertebra into the neural arch, which is the top part on top of the spinal cord, and the centrum, which is the part below that articulate. And, like, both parts articulate with other vertebrae. The round part is the centrum. The more complex part is the neural arch. And these are separate ossifications that fuse as an animal grows. Mm-hmm. And so in very, very young animals, they'll be fully separate, and then they'll fuse over time. Neurocentral suture fusion has been used as a marker of maturity in dinosaurs quite a lot. I think kind of attributing, or like going back to Brochu's work on crocodilian ontogeny, where he showed that this pattern can be used reliably to age animals. However, and I think this is stuff that Chris Griffin actually points out in his, like, very long and thorough assessing the ontogenetic maturity of reptiles paper.
Mm-hmm.
The neurocentral sutures in Sue the T-Rex are not fully closed. And we know Sue is a full adult. Well, you say that. Sue has an EFS. And an EFS, for those viewers unaware, is an abbreviation that stands for External Fundamental System, which essentially refers to when growth lines are spaced so closely together that they're very difficult to tell apart. It means that the animal's functionally stopped adding dimension to its bone, so every annual growth marker is, like, very, very closely overlaid over the last one. And so that's a piece of evidence that Carano also brings up at this time, or in the Segisaurus paper, I think like absence of an EFS means it was not done growing, but it's hard to tell how much growing it had left.
Fair enough.
It would be interesting though to subject it to some like actual growth modeling, which is pretty doable. But yeah, I don't think it's an extremely young animal.
No, that's
or
fair.
rather, like that evidence is not that. If they were fully separate, though, that would be evidence of it being a very young animal.
If what was fully separate?
If the neural arches and centra were fully separate, because what seems to happen in crocodilians, you get these different stages where it's open, where they're separate, and then we call it. I think we call it closed and then fused.
Yeah,
right. So closure is when they're joined into one unit, and fused is when you can't see the suture anymore. Right.
Yeah. There's a development. There's a complex suture that kind of fades as it ages, and that can actually be used to, I think, even more to kind of pin it down. But it's also, so like part of the issue, and Chris talks about this in his paper, although he does state in his assessment that for archosaurs, at least dinosaurs and crocodilians, that kind of fusion is at least a good indicator, like Jimbo said, to tell you if it's like a very young animal, if they're all open. But the pattern of closing appears to be different. So in alligators, it goes back to front. So the posterior vertebra, the suture between the top part, the neural arch, and the bottom part, the centrum, in case this is something we're keeping for our viewers, that closes first. And what it appears happens in dinosaurs, at least just based on the limited sample we have, including things like Majungasaurus, is it front and back to middle. So the cervicals and caudals are fusing inwards towards the dorsal vertebra.
Right. And this is important.
Indeed.
For understanding maturity. And I should note, just to plug one of my lab mates here, actually several of my lab mates are working on a project about this in theropod dinosaurs. And I think they're trying to, among other things, look for that point at which the direction of suture fusion starts changing to an avian model.
And is avian front to back? What's avian?
Avian is front to back, right?
Okay. I don't remember.
I believe it is.
All right. Dalton, have you found the information?
I've found a couple references to it. I'm trying to see if there's one sentence that's like, oh, these things generally have, gracile and robust morphs, because they mention it with coelophysis, that coelophysis has preserved gracile and robust morphs. They also mention it with they mention that Dilophosaurus, one of the specimens, is a gracile morph. And I know that this is something that is a phenomenon we observe in coelophysis, where the big ones, the adults, there are ones that are more gracile and ones that are more robust. Now I know Chris's research touches on this, and I don't remember exactly where he comes down on it, if it's actually a dichotomy or if it's just different end numbers of a spectrum, because of how kind of bizarrely they grow and how variable their growth is. Here we go. It's in the first page. This is what it says here. Ceratosaurs represented by adequate samples are also distinguished by a marked dimorphism that affects much of the skeleton of mature individuals. A robust form is characterized by a relatively long skull and neck, thick limbs, and powerfully developed muscle attachments such as the humeral epicondyles, olecranon process of the ulna, and lesser trochanter of the femur. In contrast, a gracile form preserves throughout ontogeny a number of juvenile attributes, including a relatively shorter skull and neck and slender limbs that lack hypertrophied muscle attachments. Gracile forms are not simply juveniles, however, because their characteristic structure may be fully observed in fully adult individuals. So they are making the claim that ceratosaurs, in this case, kind of early theropods writ large, are characterized by having these robust and gracile morphs. I don't believe that that's really an idea that is kind of held up.
Maybe there's more than one species there.
It also sounds like it could very easily be extreme sexual dimorphism.
Could be, but that's the information.
Yeah. Well, listen, ontogeny is certainly always a question.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
here's a question that shouldn't have been a question, which is why it has a wishbone, it has a clavicle. Now, this makes me sad to realize because our understanding of theropod evolution was held back for decades. Because what was his name again? The German anatomist?
Gilmore?
No, he's an American anatomist. Gilmore.
The German anatomist?
Heilmann, I think. The one who articulated that dinosaurs don't have clavicles and therefore theropods could not be the ancestors of birds.
Yes. I
think it's
forget his
Heilmann.
name, but
Ooh, this one's really pretty.
That's really nice. We'll put in a little insert to correct me if I was wrong, but he basically surmised an overly strict application of a principle in evolution called Dollo's law.
Who'd you say it was?
Heilmann?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Gerhard Heilmann of Denmark.
Oh, he's Danish, not German. Okay.
Careful there. Yes, he invoked Dollo's law.
Right. So Dollo's law was this idea articulated by Louis Dollo, who was another anatomist, who's a Belgian anatomist, I believe, that evolution doesn't reverse itself. So if you can't ever go backwards, and therefore any step that would appear to be like a loss can't then be followed by a gain, or the other way around. So it postulates a kind of uniform progressive assembly of a body plan with no reversals or complexity.
This is an idea that is not, I mean, the viewer thinking to himself or herself or themselves right now may simply be going, that seems silly. How silly it is. I would say to you, viewer, that in some cases, certainly, but like if we're talking about gills, like a structure like gills, right? That is lost in amniotes, and despite multiple radiations back into the sea, it's never re-evolved.
Right.
There's like thin tissue that has blood exchange surfaces on it, like in some things, but not like the gill structure. But I think the situation where your clavicles either fuse or don't fuse is something that might re-evolve.
Well, but that's not the
not
condition
really a
that he was looking at. No, well, that's not what he was talking about. So he thought dinosaurs lacked clavicles entirely. It wasn't about it being a furcula.
But I thought they identified...
They did, Alex. This is why I'm agitated. Yes. No, wait. So right, and just to be clear, to finish up Alex's point, it was not crazy for Dollo to think this. If you're starting to understand evolution and you see, hey, no bird doesn't have feathers. Mm-hmm. No mammal doesn't have, I mean, you have some with very sparse fur, but all of them at least have a little bit of hair developing. I don't even, in Dollo's time, I don't know if we even really understood that whales were mammals. Apparently, even into the 1800s, they were considered a natural resource like oil. They were not even, like, biologists didn't really even study them. It was just like, oh yeah, that's what makes the spermaceti. It's amazing that we still have any of them left. It's really just simply honestly incredible.
It's
the industrial scale.
We love that they're alive still.
And I think that even Dollo, if you could talk to him today, would say, like, I don't mean that you can't ever achieve a similar thing, but it has to be a new derivation of that thing. And that, to some degree, might be right. I think, as we now know with genetics, you can just turn like gene regulation on and off to express features. And that is something that I think Dollo would not have anticipated because he lived in the 1800s. But like, right, if you say, I don't know, become a whale, you don't just become a fish again. You become aquatic in a new derivation. What?
Become a whale.
Right, you become a whale, and you magically pop back into being a fish. It's why also we would say like the idea of breeding back to do de-extinction doesn't work, because you can't just make, like, you can't just breed large black cattle and expect them to become an aurochs again. Like, you're creating a new thing. It's not an idiotic idea. But Heilmann, in an overly strict application of Dollo's law that was not really based on good evidence, said, well, birds have a furcula, which is the fusion of the two clavicles or collarbones into one compound element. That's what makes the wishbone. But no dinosaur has a clavicle. Therefore, Despite all the anatomical similarities between birds and theropod dinosaurs, we know that theropods can't be their ancestors because they would have had to regain the lost clavicle. Now, he was writing before Segisaurus was discovered. But Segisaurus was discovered in, I think it was named in 1936. Mm-hmm. And the clavicle was identified, which should have put the issue to rest and made everybody say, oh, Dodoy. Okay, never mind. They do have clavicles. They're just tiny bones that don't preserve a lot. But that didn't happen, and it took until the 1970s. And I don't even remember... I might pull up the paper. I don't remember if John Ostrom even mentioned Segisaurus or if he was just saying it is possible to regain the clavicle.
Well, remember, everybody, absence of evidence is evidence of absence. If you didn't find it, it wasn't there.
Right. Most sauropods lacked heads.
So did Segisaurus.
Well, if I recall, I think clavicles were described in Oviraptor in the 80s by the Ruskies.
They might have been. I mean, a furcula is present on the Oviraptor type, which was found in the 1920s.
Is it described?
I got to see if I can find the paper, but it's there.
Jeez.
I've seen it.
Yeah. Well, hold on. Let me look this up before I embarrass myself again.
It's actually really quite amazing. Oh, he called it an interclavicle.
Damn.
Which is illustrated.
Hey, good for him.
And labeled as an interclavicle, which is a different unit. It's not the same as the clavicle, and I think that's the other thing, is that known furculae were misidentified as interclavicles. Which is an element that dinosaurs don't actually have. However, I don't know if they were interpreted as interclavicles because Heilman had said no dinosaur has clavicles, so every time an obvious clavicle was found, it was like, well, that's not what that is.
Can't be that. We know they didn't have those.
Oh, Barsbold did.
That doesn't surprise me.
In 1983, carnivorous dinosaurs from the Cretaceous of Mongolia.
It does not surprise me.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Yep. I mean, just the Oviraptor type was in New York since the 1920s. Everybody saw it, and nobody said, huh, you know?
Who'd have thunk it?
Well,
viewers, you may have heard the kind of the story of the discovery of the origin of birds, which is, well, the rediscovery of the origin of birds, which we've hinted at numerous times. But basically, Ostrom's work, very good descriptive work of Archaeopteryx and comparisons with Deinonychus and stuff. But it is worth pointing out that other people were coming around to, or were re-coming around to this idea at, I'm not going to say the same time because I'm not sure, but within the time period in the USSR and other parts of the world.
Yeah,
probably not in part because they had access to that very good Mongolian material.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Well, I think it kind of speaks to the importance of good fossil material for interpreting things that, like, if you find good material, you'll usually eventually get to the right answer.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I mean, a lot of credit to this goes specifically to Ridgeon Barsbold, who is still alive.
Really?
Yeah, he is. I mean, he's quite elderly, but
king.
Yeah, you know, it's also, this is always one story that I think, you know, really shows that global politics can have a really destructive impact on science. Just scientists in the USSR were kind of in parallel doing what a lot of scientists in the United States and the Western world were doing.
Yeah.
But not in collaboration with each other or really in communication. And so it's only kind of after the fall of the Iron Curtain in the late 80s to early 90s that things started kind of reconnecting. And again, like, you know, Barsbold figured out the dinosaur bird link from the specimens that he was studying in Mongolia, where he's from. Barsbold is Mongolian. At the exact same, you know, within the exact same time frame that American scientists were discovering this from Deinonychus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if only they had been able to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
That would have been cool.
Would have been what? Would have been nice.
Would have been wacky. All right, let's rank this.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amelia says it's a C tier.
Okay.
Tough crowd.
She has not seen how little and small it is.
She's been watching the stream.
Well, she just went to bed.
Yeah.
Well, she
Well, she
has
said
been.
C tier. There's more to it, though. There's an elaboration.
Oh, that's true.
Cute but unimpressive. Like Compy, but not.
I think that's very harsh. However, it's almost as harsh as I'll be. One thing we haven't said that I do like about this design is it feels like a Jurassic Park design.
Yes.
Like this could have been a toy I had as a kid from the original movie. Had they put Segisaurus into this. And therefore, I do like it. Like, I like it along that realm. But it is kind of unspecial, and I'm going to give it a B tier. It's plesiomorphic and generalized because that's the kind of theropod that it is. But it's kind of boring. I do like the colors a lot, though. So B tier.
I really like the colors, especially the patterns. That very striking kind of panther one that Alex mentioned earlier is gorgeous. And if anything, like, this is striking nostalgia for me, not Jurassic Park nostalgia, but here's a book that you guys might have had when you were kids. There's a book called Dinosaurs, the Real Monsters, and it's illustrated by a paleo artist called Steve Kirk, who had these really strikingly patterned theropods in a lot of his work. And especially there's a depiction of Dilophosaurus and Centarsus, I think, that is gorgeous, and they all have these big, bold, blotchy patterns all over them, and it really reminds me of how these guys look. So I really like it. I don't think I'd particularly go out of my way to specially include it in the park, but like a B, but of a really, really high B.
You know, I don't think that's an unfair one.
Mm-hmm.
Alex, you can go ahead.
High B. It's... I'm a liar. I like it a lot. It's a low A.
Fair enough.
The smallness does a lot for me.
Smallness is good.
Yeah.
That's all. I've already spoken my piece.
Yeah, I don't have really anything to add other than what's already been said. It is very Jurassic Park. I like it. It's good, and the colors are nice. I like the sounds. I like the sounds quite a bit, actually. I think I am probably more likely to use this in my park than Compsognathus, honestly, just because it's a little easier to see from far away. Like, it's blending into the sand here because I made it like the Navajo sandstone, which is just a big mound of sand. It's a little hard to see, and it's still very small, but it's a little bigger than Compsognathus, so it's a little more visible, so I might use it. And also I wonder if it's got like a higher appeal in terms of like gameplay value. I don't remember what Compsognathus is, so I don't know why I'm looking. But in any case, I like it. It's nice. It's got good sounds, good colors. I'll give it an A.
Very nice.
There's a C, 2 Bs, and 2 As.
A C, 2 Bs, and 2 As.
That puts it in high B.
I think that puts it in high B.
Puts it in high B. I'll put it up near the top of B.
Okay. And now Dalton.
For the
It's
moment,
time.
It's
you've
time.
all been waiting
I've
for.
been waiting for. I said this before the recording. Megalodon is my Poochie. Because whenever Megalodon's not on screen, I want the viewers to be asking, where's Megalodon? What's Megalodon doing? It's time for a big shark. I'm so happy this is in the game.
What?
Yes.
They're jumping for joy.
I've seen that with some other people too, that they seem to have some errors occasionally with just how they interface with the water, which is really funny.
Whee! Air jaws.
Let's
Look
go.
out, here comes
All right.
a big shark.
Let's let it out, Dalton.
Yo.
Ooh,
so cool.
this is a good angle too.
Yeah. The other angle is also really good. The other version of this kind of films it from above, so you really only see the dorsal fin come out.
Oh, that's nice.
I almost want to make
this-
another one and see if we get that, but
Oh, this is stunning.
we're already kind of overcrowded with Megs in this
So-
aquarium.
So I am going to steal Alex's thunder to do phylogeny for a second.
What?
I know.
We missed it on the last one. Megalodon means big tooth. Outtro means ear tooth. So its name is ear tooth, big tooth, if you believe that its genus is Outtro.
So here's
I know.
phylogeny. Are you ready?
Fine.
Yes.
This is a shark.
Really?
Oh,
It is. That was the bit, Alex. I'm sorry. You can do the real phylogeny if you want.
Well, you know what I say about this? You know the thing about a
What?
shark? He's got lifeless eyes.
Like
Like
a
a
dog.
doll.
black like a doll's
Black
eyes.
eyes like a doll's eyes. When he comes after you, he doesn't
Rolled
seem to be
back
living
in his head.
until he bites you.
Oh,
Those
just
big
like
eyes
that.
all over white, and then anyway,
Pounding and a howling.
are you doing Jaws right now?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, very good sunny bit. What? This is one of now 2 animals in the game that are just not amniotes.
Yeah.
It's just the fish. And Jimbo was right. This is in fact, and ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to believe this,
You'll never
a
believe
shark. Now, sharks are one of our cartilaginous fish in that they are. This is not our deepest phylogeny because we did talk about placoderms. But going back to placoderms, early in the evolution of fish, probably by the end of the Ordovician, we have the evolution of jaws from gill arches. This is a huge innovation. Disgusting. Horrible joint. And that's where it's gotten us. To disgusting joints popping.
Sorry. I refuse to stop.
I know you do. Alive today, the most early diverging group of gnathostomes, of these jawed fish, are the cartilaginous fish, the chondrichthyans. And that refers to the fact that they don't really have bones. They have the bones are instead what are normally bones are prismatic cartilage, right? It's prismatic.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's structure, they're strong, but it's not ossified. Now, interestingly, early on, it appears that the early ancestors of cartilaginous fish were in fact bony, and this is a collection of organisms called acanthodians, quote unquote spiny sharks, that appear in the Silurian at least. And they are a polyphyletic assemblage. Most of them are now believed to be early chondrichthyans, so close relatives of sharks and things. Others might be early ray fin fish. So as we go into the Devonian, we begin to see a shape evolve. And viewer, you may have heard a fun fact once or twice, which was, sharks are older than the dinosaurs. And because we here at the Skeleton Crew are indeed pedants and miserable people, I'm going to say to you something that you may go, what? I don't believe that, which are silachomorphs, which are really sharks. When you say shark, that's what you mean. You mean the silachomorph. Are probably only as old as the Jurassic period. There's some tenuous, scrappy fossil stuff and some uncertainty that might push them back before the dinosaurs, but all the sharks you see today are evolving probably in the early Jurassic and not particularly recognizable until the Cretaceous. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't shark-shaped things. This is going to be a slightly long phylogeny because this is interesting and we're never going to get to talk about it again. Entering into the Carboniferous, a group of these cartilaginous fish, the holocephalians, and these are represented today only by, do you not like them, Dalton?
No, the one, I went on like a green one that got produced, so I think it was really ugly, so I just moved away.
I see.
I didn't like the colors. This one, I don't like the spots, but I like.
These today are represented by chimera, which are also, at least the modern shape, fairly recent. There's some Jurassic ones. But some of these would evolve to look like sharks. So you might be familiar with the kind of the infamous helicoprion, which is the sawtooth shark. This is...
love helicoprion.
Yeah, very cool. This is one of these holocephalians. And they come in all sorts of shapes. There are flying fish versions of these things that look like flying fish. There are long eel ones with spikes on their backs. There are edestes, I think they're called, which are like scissor mouths.
Yeah.
And some of them have like long sailfish noses. Some of them are like maybe 30 feet long. So like the Carboniferous Permian seas are full of not sharks. They all die by like the early Triassic. Very few of these holocephalians are left. And it appears that in the Triassic, there's a new pulse of radiation. And these are the hybodonts and the xenocanthids, which look, again, the hybodonts look a lot like sharks, and they survive into the Cenozoic. They actually get pretty close to the modern, which is shocking. And some of them also evolve very strange shapes. And then there are the xenocanthids, which are these long eel-like sharks that are actually pretty comfortable in the freshwater, too. I think hybodonts are as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hybodonts are all over. This is why whenever we say, is it a braided river system? I usually answer with, oh my god, are there hybodont shark spines? Or hybodont shark teeth?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
History, it was actually not uncommon for a shark to wind up in a river.
Yeah. Nowadays, it's only really bull sharks so that we can dunk on people on Twitter who say, why are there shark attacks recorded in Missouri? As if they're making... Well, I mean, they think they're making an intelligent observation. They're like, the map is flawed. To which I would say, bull sharks are flawed. Because they should not be going that far upriver. There should not be sharks in Iowa. Okay? That is a f***ed up thing.
It's cool that happened.
It
is cool.
In my opinion.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Except when people die. That's not cool.
Everything dies in the Triassic. Well, so xenocanthids die in the Triassic. Hybodonts make it through. But in the emerging Jurassic seas, then evolve... all these things are also elasmobranchs, which are whatever. But now we're in like the batoids and sharks, which really seem to begin to diversify in the Jurassic. Batoids being rays and their relatives, and then silachomorphs, which are sharks. Megalodon is a kind of shark, and I promised Dalton I was going to call it that.
He did say this to me. I'm going
to only call it Megalodon because calling it Outtro has the same energy as a 5-year-old telling someone that pterosaurs aren't dinosaurs. Your ability to know something from Wikipedia is not cool. My ability to say Megalodon like that is cool.
To embody that 5-year-old for a second. Actually, don't you mean that it's not the genus Megalodon? Because the genus Megalodon...
If I hear about the clam,
it's a clam. Did you know it's a clam? It's a clam.
I am. We'll get back on phylogeny. I am very curious because he's doing the thing. God, that's really cool.
That's so cool.
I am really curious because I know that they have the species like Dinopedia in the game. I wonder what genus they give it. I bet they give it Outtro.
Let's check.
Let's find out if they're cool.
But how do we access it?
Call it charcoal. Anyway, just to wrap up my section of phylogeny, because I'm going to hand it to Dalton, who did quite a bit of reading and research for today's video. So bringing us into the modern, what we would consider kind of the modern diversification of sharks, to which in which Outtro fits.
No, Dalton, you were in the right place.
I was? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that begins to happen in the Jurassic. Now, before I hand it over to Dalton, I would like to say, dear viewer, we talked about this before we made the video, but you might have noticed in the Oh, I'm sorry, Dalton.
Oops. No, they give it the wrong genus. They just say genus Megalodon.
Kings.
There we go.
Let's go.
Maybe that's like...
No, that's correct. Based.
I wonder if that's a coding thing where they like... Otherwise it would come up in the Dinopedia as Outtro.
Yeah, I think that's the case.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I bet. But you...
Because everything else in the game is named on a genus.
Yeah. You see the sharks swimming around, and you see kelp in the background. And as Dalton said, I think, or maybe it was Scott,
That's Scott.
This is the only enclosure you could probably do this for, because apparently the earliest fossil evidence, definite fossil evidence of kelp, is from the Miocene. Although, as we found out in a Google, it looks like the brown algae fossil record might extend back to like the Ordovician. It's just very hard to tell what is a brown algae from like a smear on a rock.
And if it was like kelp forming, it's
Right,
a
exactly.
different question.
Yes, which you might not know, is that a kelp is not really a plant. It's a macro algae, which is different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is kind of sad that they add in this absolutely gorgeous kelp that looks so nice in the tanks. And if you wanted to make a paleo accurate environment for these critters, literally it's only usable for Megalodon because it is the most recent critter in the game, or at least the most recent breedable critter in the game, because if you want to be uber pedantic, you could say that you do make a lot of goats.
And the goats are not breedable.
Fair enough. Sure. So I'll continue on the phylogeny. Alex left us off. Where'd you leave us off? You left us off kind of in elasmobranchi.
No, up in squalomorphs.
Okay, up in squalomorphs. Sure. So once we get past like the split between rays and sharks, there are kind of two big groups of sharks. There are squalomorphs and galeomorphs. Your squalomorphs are going to have things like your 6 and 7 gill sharks, angel sharks, saw sharks, and then squaliforms, which are a bunch of different sharks. And then your galeomorphs, on the other hand, which is where we're going to be spending our time, they include sharks like bullheads and Port Jacksons. You get carpet sharks, and then kind of your more prototypical sharky sharks, like your ground sharks, dusky sharks, silk sharks. And then you get into a group called lamniforms, which is where we're going to be spending the rest of our time.
I'm sorry. Is there a sharky shark and the Funky Bunch joke to be made here?
No, stop
It's
it.
possible.
Before Dalton dives in, not a correction. I just want to say a fun thing I remembered about the squaliforms.
Oh yeah, please.
Which I think is the group that includes dogfish and stuff.
I think so.
But they're cool. Some of them are venomous.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
and most of them are bioluminescent.
Very
What?
cool.
Yeah. Except for most of them are deep sea. I think the dog sharks are one of the few like upper pelagic ones.
You know what's also fun about dogfish?
I've caught one.
I do know that, but that's not what I knew was fun about them.
Well, they're venomous too. We didn't know when we caught it.
Oh yeah.
We could have got jabbed.
Apparently, and I've heard, and I've never found proof of this, but apparently dogfish was actually traditionally what was used in fish and chips in Britain.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's cod now. It's all whitefish now, but apparently that was like, at least at one point, what was usually used.
That sounds about in keeping with what I would expect from British cuisine.
I mean, it's apparently pretty good. I don't know.
No. I know. I've never had shark, but I know people who say it's good.
But yeah, no, listen, lamprey also used to be a delicacy to the point that one of the kings of England died because he ate so many lamprey that his stomach ruptured.
Was it just one and it just slimed him to death?
That's hagfish. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, he just basically sat down and like slurped down lampreys, and then his stomach ruptured and he died.
Huh.
You know,
according to legend. Also, I think he died only in the presence of his court physicians, who were then like, yeah, man, he just ate a lot of lampreys and he died. There's nothing we could have done.
Which is
That's just what
sounds like
happens.
they murdered him.
I think they might have killed him. It was the lampreys. You know how he was about lampreys.
Oh, he loved lampreys. Sorry,
I
Dalton,
do.
please.
I was just saying, like my fun fact about dogfish is that I believe the etymology of dogfish comes from the old name that people used for just all sharks, which was calling them sea dogs.
Yeah.
Well, there was I thought it was thought for some time that they hunted in packs, like that they don't actually do that, but it was like folklore or sailor talk.
I don't know. I think because we went on like a dive into the etymology of this in comparative anatomy because one of the students asked, like, why do they call them dogfish? And we were like, well, it's because sea dogs are like, why do they call them sea dogs? And I think the pack thing might be part of it. I also just think it was more of like a like dog, less in terms of trying to evoke like a canine, and more
Like
kind of trying to
pejorative.
evoke like a menace. Like like, oh, these dogs, like these like dog is kind of a similar like word to pest. But I'm not a linguistic historian, so take everything I just said with a grain of salt. But what I am is a biologist, and so I know a thing or two about phylogeny. And we'll continue on the phylogeny. So we're in this group of sharks called lamniforms. And oh my god, and lamniforms are known to levitate out of the water.
It's an interesting synapomorphy of lamniforms there.
Well, especially it's why Aquilolamna looks the way it does.
Yeah. So yeah, Aquilolamna, the weird like long pectoral finned strange fossil eagle shark, is a lamniform. But our more familiar lamniforms, there are 17 species. So it's a family that doesn't contain or an order, excuse me, to placate any Linnaean pedants. It's an order, and it contains 17 species. And amongst these species are thresher sharks. You've got your lamnoids, which are things like your makos, your great whites, your salmon sharks, your porbeagle sharks. Some oddballs. You've also got the megamouth shark is a lamniform. You've got the goblin shark is a lamniform. Your sand tiger sharks are lamniforms, and they're close relatives. And then there's a bunch of extinct things that are put in this group as well. So yeah, your basic kind of, if you're trying to think of lamniforms, threshers, great whites, makos, the little great whites, which are like porbeagles and not sand tigers, salmons, your porbeagles and salmon sharks, your sand tiger sharks, basking sharks, goblin sharks, and megamouths. It's kind of an eclectic group, but they kind of have a similar body form, more or less, of this kind of classic Jaws shark, long, big dorsal fin, decently sized pectoral fins, and they're pelagic. I think pretty much all of them are pelagic. And Megalodon is part of an extinct group of lamniforms called ottodontids, which we alluded to with the current most popular generic assignment of Megalodon to Otodus, which means ear tooth. Now, ottodontids have a fossil record that goes back to the late Cretaceous. There's a taxon called Cradolamna, and then there is the genus Otodus, the type genus of which is Otodus obliquus, and then there are a number of other Otodus species, provisionally including Megalodon, as well as Megalodon's close relatives, O. chibutensis, O. angustidens, and so on. If you've heard of like kind of these other mega-toothed big sharks, those are them. And they kind of form a series of progressively larger and larger sharks that concludes with Megalodon, which was alive in the Miocene and up into the Pliocene. These are these mega-toothed sharks that are, the whole lineage is extinct now. There was a time when it was thought that great whites were descendants of Megalodon or close relatives of Megalodon. That's no longer considered the case. We have a good record that indicates the transition from Otodus, which has these little kind of cusplets on the side of its teeth. So you've got the main triangle and then these two other little triangles off on the side. And there's a good record of those like side cusps shrinking and shrinking until you get just the big, huge, honking triangular teeth of Megalodon. There is invoked in the literature and the kind of quasi-literature, there's a lot of invocation of like direct ancestry and kind of chronospecies and stuff And it's hard to test that. And I think it's equally explainable with a pattern of cladogenesis of these sharks. And it's just hard to tell because as cartilaginous fish, they don't have a tremendously good fossil record. They have a great record of teeth because, as you can see, they've got tons of them and they fall out all the time and are constantly replaced. But the rest of the body, we don't really have much data from. We've got some vertebral elements from Megalodon that are referred to it and some rostral elements that we'll talk about later as we talk about the appearance of this particular reconstruction of Megalodon. But regarding Ototus and Megalodon and where that goes in lamniforms, it's a little uncertain. So I was trying to find a good molecular phylogeny of lamniforms, and I found what seems to be a pretty recent one. And it essentially comes to kind of a broad structure of the group wherein great white sharks and makos are each other's closest relatives, which is congruent with what we see in the fossil record, that it seems that great whites are not, descendant from Megalodon, but are more related to this broad-toothed mako shark that's now extinct. Those together, the great white and the makos are most closely related to the porbeagle and the salmon shark, which makes sense if you look at them, because those two just kind of look like smaller great whites. That clade is probably most closely related to the basking shark, which then that group, the sister to that, would be the sand tiger sharks. And then on the other side of the lamniforms, you've got your thresher sharks being most closely related to your megamouths, and then the goblin shark outside of that. So kind of a weird structure, but that's where we think of, that's my best assessment of the structure of living lamniforms, and where otodontids go in it is a bit of a mystery, which has implications for how we reconstruct this animal. There's been a lot of discussion over, how accurate is this particular version of Megalodon, given what we know.
Discourse, one might say.
Discourse, even. And I mean, I think I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about this because I got pretty passionate about it. But the overarching theme here is we have so little data to go off of, really. We have so little information about the life appearance of Megalodon. And we do our best, people researching sharks do their best to infer what this thing looked like and what kind of, how it lived with that data and the data of its close relatives. But that can only go so far because the lamniforms as a whole is a group with a pretty diverse array of sharks. It has been invoked that otodontids may be sister to the group that includes great whites and makos, the lamnidae, or the lamnoidea, these mackerel sharks, right? That's been invoked, but the evidence used to do it is sparse, and it hasn't been recovered, I believe, in an actual cladistic analysis. People have said, oh, here are some characters that might support this particular relationship, but it's been subsequently pointed out that some of those characters, like the degree of calcification of the rostrum and the kind of inferred regional endothermy, are more widespread among sharks and among lamniforms than would be tremendously useful for making a declarative statement that, yes, this is the sister group relationship. So while we're confident that Megalodon is a lamniform, I think that's kind of the safest cutoff bet that we can put towards where it falls in that group, which has implications for how we reconstruct it. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add, ask, or do
you're
anything
locked in.
before we?
No, you got this. This is your baby.
Okay.
Finish.
So, while we're coming out of phylogenum, I'm going to briefly talk about the genera. So Megalodon has been assigned to a number of genera over the course of its existence from it being recognized as an animal. And I'm not going to spend, I don't think any of us really want to spend too much time talking about the really early evidence, like tungstones and stuff of people recognizing that these are fossils of all. It's interesting for the history of the science, but for the sake of discussing Megalodon, I'm going to kind of gloss over that. But it has been assigned to many genera. Wikipedia provides a few, including Carcharias, Carcharocles, Carcharodon, Megasolacus, Procarcharodon, Salaki, and Ototus, potentially most recently. So the Carcharodon, you may have heard at one point Carcharodon Megalodon, and you may be aware that the great white shark is Carcharodon Carcharias. This is back when the idea was that Megalodon and great whites were really close relatives. That's no longer supported, and so the putting it as Carcharodon Megalodon is not supported by any evidence that we have and should not be done. Kind of the two camps that have arisen most recently is either Carcharocles or Otodus. And neither one of these is tremendously supported by like a cladistic analysis that's doing this. But it is supported by potential sister group relationships and how we understand the group of Otodus to like the Otodontids to be constructed. So this is but best summed up in the paper by Kenshu Shimada that describes the shark Megalolamna, another good name, in which several kind of possibilities of how these things are related to one another are arranged. And there is this group of Megalodon and its close relatives like Chubutensis that are kind of included as this Carcharocles group. And depending on how you arrange everything that's referred to Otodus with regards to Carcharocles, the only way to make Otodus monophyletic is to lump Carcharocles and therefore Megalodon into it. So making Otodus monophyletic means that we have Otodus Megalodon. Oh, there's a feeding. I'm sorry. I was a little too quick on the draw there. Now, there is another solution to this problem, however, and that is to leave Otodus as Otodus obliquus, leave the Megalodon group as Carcharocles, and then there's a few other Otodus species that would just need new generic names. My personal philosophy on how to handle a situation like that would be that the safer move would be to reassign the other Otodus specimens to other genera, because that future-proofs it from finding more things that are more closely related to one of them than to another. Mm-hmm. And it also establishes, like, it pays reference to the fact that we, I think, recognize these really big megatooth sharks, the Megalodon group, if you want, as kind of distinct from the earlier Otodontids. I think it's kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater a little bit to just call it all Otodus, because it erases some diversity. But again, genera are fake, right? It's a label of convenience. And in my case, it's also a bit of a label of preference, because I happen to like the name Carcharocles more than Otodus, and I'm not ashamed to say that that's the case. In my worldview,
saying it's not.
I would say that we would call it Carcharocles Megalodon. Currently, most authors seem to be putting it under Otodus. I don't write in this literature, so I don't have the risk of, stepping in it, as it were, and making a mistake there. But I think there is still validity in the Carcharocles name, and that's the one that I hold in my heart, despite the fact that most people are now calling it Otodus. And now that we have wrapped up taxonomy, let's talk about the appearance of Megalodon. Megalodon is a big shark. That's it. It looked like a big shark. And they've done a great job depicting Megalodon in this game, I think. I really, really like this depiction. There's a number of things I like about it, and there's some things that maybe I'd change. Now, I say this as an impassioned reader of the literature, not as a active shark scientist. So, bear that in mind. But there's been some discourse about the life appearance of Megalodon, especially recently, because several papers have come out that invoke various ideas about what Megalodon looked like. And in particular, was Megalodon kind of long and skinny, or was it shorter, squatter, and more broad? And we have kind of, as a field of both scientists and artists, agreed generally that just reconstructing it as a scaled-up great white is not a great idea, because they're not closely related to great white sharks. It's probably obfuscating unique things about Megalodon.
I remember there was a lot of worry when it was proposed that Megalodon would be added to the game of just like, are they just going to take the great white shark model from the shark feeder and just scale it up and make it swim?
Yeah, they did not, thankfully.
Yes.
Also, this is
a ridiculous thing to believe.
Yeah.
But so there's been several ideas put forward, and we're gonna walk through them kind of chronologically a little bit, and then discuss some of their implications. And this is coming at the tail end of a long history of research into Megalodon. But in 2020, a paper was published, Body Dimensions of the Extinct Giant Shark, Otodus Megalodon, a 2D reconstruction by Jack Cooper and several colleagues. This is a good paper, and it tries to do a reconstruction of Megalodon in a more informed way than simply just scaling up a great white shark. They took measurements from, and I want to make sure I get the group name right. Well, they took measurements from 5 different modern analogs to Megalodon. So 5 close relatives in lamniforms. And they decided to use the great white shark, the 2 species of mako shark, the poor beagle, and the salmon shark. And they used these 5 sharks to take measurements of all kinds of body proportions and ratios and dimensions. So things like total body length, the height of the tail, the length of the pectoral fins, height of the dorsal fin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, total body length. And they chose those sharks because they are close relatives of Megalodon, and everyone agrees on that, and that they are ecologically similar to Megalodon. And then that's another thing we typically agree on, that we think of Megalodon as a large-bodied pelagic predator, often going after kind of larger game, marine mammals predominantly, but also big turtles, big fish, things like that, other sharks. And that's what these modern analogs are doing. So they took measurements from all these modern analogs, and they used those to create a model that would associate each of those measurements with a given body size, and then tested that by giving total lengths of 3 different sized megalodons, from like a baby to a big adult. They used 8 meters, 3 meters, 8 meters, and 16 meters of total body length to reconstruct the proportions of Megalodon based off of all of these measurements that they took. And then they tested that measurement, their kind of model, by asking, could you accurately predict the measurements that you would see of a great white shark of any given case? And the answer was yes. And a lot of this is informed by the idea that ecology is going to be dictating a lot of morphological variables for these animals, because this tends to happen especially in the marine realm, where things are optimized for a given performance in a given ecology, and you converge on body shape a lot. This is well informed. This is cool, and they produce a reconstruction that's really beautiful. Oliver Demus did the art for it, and they show, here's what we think Megalodon looked like given these 5 extant sharks, and how all of their different appendages and body measurements relate to the total size of the animal. I think this is a really innovative approach that they took. And then this is they compound on this, and they convert it into a 3D reconstruction based off of a CT scan of a baby great white shark, scaled up with the associated teeth of a specimen of Megalodon, and then the associated vertebral column of a specimen of Megalodon, the best vertebral column that we have, which is not, they note, the complete animal. Everyone's aware that it's not the complete animal, but it gives a decent idea, and they use that to create a 3D model. That's all well and good, and the proportions are a little different than what we see in the game. It's a little bit, their particular model is a little thicker, a little taller in the belly, and a little shorter than this. This model takes a bit more, I think, out from this newest publication that has come out in response to this. There's been a bit of a back and forth. In this publication, it's by Stearns and colleagues. It's called White Shark Comparisons Reveal a Slender Body for the Extinct Megatooth Shark, Ototus megalodon. And this is a huge author list of a lot of people coming together to investigate what can we actually infer reasonably about the body proportions and size of Megalodon. What can we learn about it from the fossil record? And there's several points that are made. The first point being that just comparing them to great white sharks is not sufficient. And that's not what the prior paper did. That's not what the Cooper paper did. They used several different sharks to generate their comparison. But why can't we just compare it to a great white shark? It probably looked something like one, and it's doing something similar ecologically, but at a bigger scale. The issue is that there is that complete vertebral column of Megalodon. Well, not complete, but the best one, the most vertebrae, right? And if you take the largest one of those vertebrae and you measure its diameter, and you take a great white shark and you say, okay, for a given great white shark, we can come up with a ratio of how big the biggest vertebra is compared to how long the animal is. And if you use that ratio with Megalodon, you take the biggest vertebra from this fossil column and you say, oh, this is a 9-meter shark, more or less. But if you actually just measure out all of the preserved vertebra, you get 11 meters. So right off the bat, you can say, for a given vertebral size, Megalodon is proportionally longer than a great white shark. Mm-hmm. And that's acknowledged by both kind of, I don't want to say sides, but by both groups working on this problem, is that it's longer than a great white shark. And that's interesting in and of itself. And the 3D model that the Cooper team created, they even note that it's longer than what they would have expected it to be prior to making the model, which is interesting. The second team kind of further notes, however, that because so much of this vertebral column is missing, and we don't know how much of it is missing, this 11 meters is a minimum length. And the disagreement kind of arises with how they've positioned it. So in the 3D model by the Cooper team, they've taken this vertebral column and just articulated it with the skull at the point of the largest vertebra. But what the other team is saying is that if you look at modern sharks, the largest vertebra tends to be in the middle of the body, not right next to the head. So where they have affixed to the head should kind of slide back a little bit. And the very posterior vertebrae are probably actually a part of the tail. So it's unclear exactly how long it is, but they suspect that Megalodon had a longer and more slender body than what has been reported in that 3D model. There's been some misinterpretation, I think, of this paper, kind of in the paleo internet sphere, as proposing a different reconstruction of Megalodon and like this new body plan. They don't really make a concrete proposal like, this is what Megalodon looked like. They provide a schematic, and they're very specific in saying this is not a reconstruction, it is just a schematic of what things might be. And it's really more of a call to consideration that given the data we have, a longer and slightly more slender shark might be expected. And what's interesting is that a more slender shape is actually achieved by the team who made the 3D model. When they were first constructing it, they note like, hey, this model ended up a lot slimmer than we thought it might be. And then when they scaled it to the other 5 lamnids that they looked at, it wound up being chunkier because they were looking at those particular 5 sharks. I think, and the other team makes a point to this fact too, that like ecology is going to play a huge factor in body shape, but phylogeny is also going to play a big factor. And because we don't have a confident placement of Megalodon in lamniforms, it's hard to say how it's like, if you compared it to say like a basking shark or a goblin shark, which I don't think you should, but like you would get some different expectations of what its body might look like. And I think it's important to take that into consideration. And I think the kind of takeaway message of all of this is that there's been a lot of work, a lot of serious work looking at Megalodon recently and trying to reconstruct its body proportions. And there's been a lot of progress made on that and new methods developed. And it's exciting. And within the literature, I think for the most part, everyone agrees that these are models, they're approximations, they are ideas that we're testing and discussing. Where I think a disconnect can kind of happen is then interfacing that literature into the public, and people start to think, oh, we know what this animal looked like. We have a good idea. When really we don't, because we have teeth. We have teeth and vertebrae. And I mentioned earlier, we have rostral cartilage. There is the cartilage at the tip of the snout. We've found, there have been several of those found that are potentially referable to Megalodon. A key point is they weren't found with teeth, so we can't actually refer them to a particular shark. But given the species of sharks that were found in that area, it's probable that they belong to either like Megalodon or Paraototus or something like that. People have been talking about this might have too blunt of a snout, considering the kind of shape of that rostral cartilage. I went and did the cardinal sin of overlaying it in dorsal and left lateral view and putting it opaque. I don't think maybe it's a little too blunt, but like not appreciably so. I think that this model of Megalodon takes into account a lot of the recent discussions about its life appearance and has come upon, I would say, a pretty agreeable one. It looks naturalistic. It's not like offensive to look at. It seems to be taking into account some of the slimness and length compared to some of the other reconstructions, but it still seems to be kind of matching the fin proportions that you might expect to see. Maybe the pectoral fins are a bit long, but it's really picking nits at that point.
I kind of love that, though. It makes it distinct looking.
Yes, like they did a good job making it distinct. Some people have complained about the coloration. Again, it's a video game, so like they've got like the green ones that are almost certainly wrong, but that's just for people who want a green shark. if you use the this base pattern with a dark color and a light underbelly, I see no problem with this. And
I mean, that's the case. Sorry, go on.
I was just saying, people have been like, oh, it shouldn't have stripes, it shouldn't have spots because, lambda forms tend not to have those. And I would just say that, like, that's not wrong. But what you really ought to be saying is the most conservative approach would be to not include these features. That would be the most conservative and phylogenetically informed approach. But again, this has been part of a lineage that was evolving independently of other lambdids since the Cretaceous. That's ample time for them to develop alternate coloration patterns. So I think the biggest danger, don't make declarative statements about Megalodon because we have so little data.
I think I'll also chime in and say on the colors and pattern and stuff is that, like, as you said, yeah, there's going to be a bunch of big, wacky, crazy colors because it's a game and they need to have choice. And they also already have a predetermined, like, base color, kind of system to the whole game. And there's only so much that you can really do with that. I mean, hell, for most of the marine critters in the game, whenever I put them in my parks, most larger marine animals are just kind of dark on top, light on the bottom, and that's really it. A lot of the time, I'm a little conservative when it comes to my patterning on things, and I just do it that way. And also, if it really bugs you that, like, there's patterning and stuff on here, again, that's the system that's just in the game as a base for how you do literally every animal. If it really bugs you, turn it off. Just have it be a base skin. Just, it doesn't need to have spots if you don't want it to have spots. It's an option. So
that concludes my kind of personal diatribe on Megalodon reconstructions that has been haunting me since this was revealed to be Megalodon. It's just something I'm passionate about, and I just think that it just should be approached with care.
It should. Now, Dalton, It's 1:32 a.m. I've been awake for many hours, and I'm just going to be slightly less diplomatic than you.
Okay.
So, Dalton, that was an incredibly even-handed response here. I have two responses for all the Twitter threads about this and all the various arguments that I see in social media. Please stop. We don't have enough data to answer this question. To some degree. There are many good estimates we could derive. But there is going to be, as with everything in paleontology, a range of possibilities. And to some degree, we need to be comfortable with that. And what I don't like seeing a lot, because, I don't mean this as a criticism, because I think that if you're not within the scientific community yet, you probably don't understand the way we think about accuracy of reconstruction because you haven't been exposed to it yet. That's something that we try to do through this channel. So boy, howdy, I'm going to expose you to it. So when we deal with accuracy or anything, I think, and this is something we talked about with Utah Raptor as well in our last major DLC video. I'm not counting the hybrids because that video didn't do so well.
No, it's a minor DLC video.
Yeah. There's a difference between accuracy and verisimilitude. Mm-hmm. Accuracy, in my opinion, should reflect, does it agree with the fossil evidence? If it agrees with the fossil evidence, it's accurate. Verisimilitude or believability or scientific informedness or anything like that.
Authenticity.
But even authenticity, there's no way to...
Yes.
Like, there's just no way to bound it. I've seen a lot of depictions of Megalodon on social media recently, and like Dalton, I've been kind of having big feelings about it. Not to dismiss... not to make it sound like I'm dismissing what you're saying, but I have big feelings about it. Because I just find it very kind of maybe misguided to be arguing about whose depiction of Megalodon is the most accurate when what we have is very, very insufficient to answer that question. But I mean, just to bring up the example of the rostral cartilage again, right? We have no way of really tying it to Megalodon, right?
Yeah, it's inferential and not right. and fairly strongly inferential. Like, I wouldn't doubt it, but it's important to take it with a grain of salt.
Right. I mean, there's always the difficulty of these cartilaginous animals that, it's going to be pretty hard to tie the remains together to get a consistent inference of size or shape. And I think that it is just critical to keep that in mind all the time when we talk about these sorts of things. I see this talked about a lot. Who's got the most accurate skeletal of this? All of these various things. I think as long as it's agreeing with what the evidence is with what the fossil evidence actually is, it's accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Accuracy is a spectrum.
Well, no, it's not. It's an absolute, but it is. There's a lot of leeway around accuracy because there's just the point where we don't know anymore.
Yes, there are also, I would say, it is a spectrum in that what is available. Well, obviously, there's the most accurate something can be, which is knowing it, but it's a spectrum in what is the thing you are looking at a given moment, and what is its ability to reflect, like, the material reality of a specimen or an organism. And a drawing in left lateral view of a skeleton is not the most accurate thing that could exist because you can't see all the characters. A skeleton in any view is not the most accurate version of something that can exist. And I'm begging people to maybe consider an organism in something that's not left lateral view, please.
That's what we have right lateral view for, Alex.
Yes, try right lateral view.
Dalton did dorsal view.
Or 3D. We're entering the age of 3D images. Or maybe, like, I don't know, dorsal view. That's exciting.
Ventral view is great.
Yeah.
I love ventral view.
Who doesn't love a good ventral view?
Anything that's not one specimen is a reconstruction in some regard. If always check what's preserved, what's being reconstructed based on what.
And I mean, you want to start getting to the really trippy part. A lot of well-preserved specimens are, to some degree, a little bit distorted plastically.
Yeah.
And it is
almost all of them.
So, like, I've been working with tyrannosaurs a lot recently. Tyrannosaur bones are usually cited as being undistorted. And some of these really beautiful specimens, they don't quite articulate like they should.
It's been 70 million years. They're going to be a little distorted.
Right.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm like, there was that cast of 5027 that was right outside my prep bay for like a whole year that I was looking at, and I'm like, this bitch italics.
Well, yes, that one is in italics, but it is. It's true of some other specimens that I've heard touted as like kind of perfect. Like sometimes I just can't get the palatine to articulate with the maxilla. They are deformed in ways that they don't articulate anymore. But if you look at either one in isolation, they look perfect.
Yeah.
Anytime you're articulating a skeleton or coming up with some sort of inference about the animal as it was when it was put together or covered in flesh and blood, there's a lot of inference going on. And that inference can be guided scientifically, but I think once you're in the stage of the inference, both are the same accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
So give up.
Right. Or just acknowledge that accuracy is maybe not always, I think here's my hot take. My favorite paleo art is the paleo art that looks really nice. It's not always the most accurate. I love Doug Henderson pieces. I have 3 of them hanging behind me. Doug Henderson's anatomy is pretty good, but oh my God, Al just wandered by in the background like the Patterson footage. Doug Henderson's anatomy is pretty good, but it's not the best. Mm-hmm. But I still think it's my favorite paleo art of all time.
James, you should see if you haven't been to the Boston Museum of Science.
I have.
You have?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Their little paleo area that's just wallpapered in his stuff.
It's great. The MOR has a gallery.
Nice.
I think they might be removing it because they're doing some exhibit renovation, but it was a gallery of his art that's just beautiful. I mean, I'm sure they're going to keep the pieces in collection, but they're doing some renovation of the spaces.
One of my favorite paleo art books is his one on the like Chinle Formation, where it's
This
just
is-
I think. Yeah, where I think the whole thing's in black and white as well, which is
one
like
of those back
God.
there is that it's the one of the tornado hitting the ground.
I recognize it even from this distance.
I wish he
He's
was
so
still doing
good.
that shit. God damn it.
I think he is a
Yeah.
little bit. I mean, he's quite old now, so I think his output has slowed down. But another person whose work I loved, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, was Brian Franczak, and I think that he may have been my favorite paleo artist of all time, to be honest. There's something about Brian Franczak's pieces that just capture reality in ways that I didn't realize until quite recently. I think really colored the way I tend to imagine dinosaurs and want to kind of put them back in their real living, breathing reality.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just feel like real places.
Yeah.
I'm going to send my low-key favorite piece.
Feels
in
like
chat.
the animal's supposed to be there.
Yes. Like this one, I wouldn't say it looks like a photograph, but it certainly looks real.
God.
Oh, yeah. That's fantastic.
Landscapes. We love landscapes.
I do love landscapes.
Stunning.
Yeah, that's so good. That's
Yeah.
so it bussin'.
I mean, again, he was the one who illustrated fully a little book of dinosaur illustrations, including this one that as a child I looked at so closely I lacerated my cornea on one of the pages.
I'm gonna say
I love that story.
You know, this is so good that it makes me almost recant one of our skeleton crew sayings.
Of what?
The point of paleontology is not to make to reconstruct what a dinosaur looked like. What's the most accurate version of a T-Rex? But now seeing this, I'm thinking
Maybe it is.
Yeah, it is.
Maybe it is because that's pretty good.
I mean, his work really just hit something completely different. The Pachycephalosaurus is also just a brilliant piece.
Oh, it's basically what I think of when
Oh
I
my
think of
God.
Pachycephalosaurus.
That's great.
That's good stuff. You know what else is good stuff?
What's that?
Megalodon. Could we rank
Yeah.
it, please?
Megalodon?
Indeed.
Yeah, we can.
Megalodon.
Meg.
This is a big shark that ate whales.
Megalodon.
It's the coolest animal.
It's a very cool animal. It's a huge shark.
Yeah.
So big.
Straight facts.
So are we going to rank it?
Please.
Yes.
Indeed. Yeah.
Amelia has sent her rank.
Yes. She sent a very good rank.
Mhm.
Yes. She says, I have to go to bed, but I love the shark. The shark is great. It's cute in the great white salmon shark way, which I don't give a if it's correct or not. I was fully expecting the gross Jurassic World Alive great white ripoff, and it's not that at all. So Amelia says H tier. I'm going to fess up to something right now before I give it a good rank.
Okay.
I've never been a huge Megalodon fan.
Fair enough. I know.
Yeah.
I know there are many people have many issues.
He doesn't
We
like
work
things
through
that
them.
swim.
Well, right. No. We know I have a general disinterest in ocean life, but like, which again, I wish were different. To be clear, like just like my musical thing that people are still roasting me in the comments over, I didn't choose to be like this, okay? I have to be true to myself. I would like to enjoy musicals. I would like to go out and be like, oh yes, what a wonderful show. And I would like to like the ocean. There's many amazing animals that live in there. I like sharks in general, though. I love the different weird common names the groups have. Like, I still want to understand why there's a clade called Requiem sharks. That's a great name.
So cool.
It's great.
I want to start just giving, like, that's what I want to name dinosaur clades. Just random, weird, overly edgy common names. Just, these are Requiem theropods.
James is a man who like stepped out of a 1910 like oil town, who has no interest in the mysteries of the world. He appeared and he said, I stand to make a handsome profit in this industry. Music, I have no time. The mysteries of the sea, I have no time, sir.
Not for me.
Listen, I do love the mysteries of the land, though. I don't know. Anyway, no, it's just Megalodon. I think I react to Megalodon in the way that a lot of people react to T-Rex, which I understand completely. Is just, it's just like, okay, yeah, I get it. Really big shark. Cool. Kids like it a lot.
Actually, James, relative to T-Rex, In the trailer for this, it mentions it has a bite force bigger than T-Rex. Is that true?
God, I don't know. I really don't know what average shark bite forces are like. It's so much heavier. I mean, it's estimated to weigh like what, 65 tons?
Jesus Christ!
Like
I think like 50 tons, but it's humongous.
I am certain it had a higher bite force than T-Rex.
Almost certainly.
That is really big.
It's so big. It's just so big.
Yeah, it's really big.
How many rocket ships could this one put into orbit?
A lot. So this all being said, like I've just never really I've never had an interest in the Meg movies or book series or anything. Like it's just like
you got to watch the second one. The second one's rad.
I do.
God, it's so bad.
But yeah, I've just never had that intrinsic response of like, oh, Megalodon, I really like that. However, this is a beautiful model. And while I'm not going to give it an H tier because I think H tier needs to generally be little guy tier, and this is not a little guy.
Opposite.
This is the least little guy we've done. I got to give it an S tier. I think it's a great model. I think it feels alive in ways that not every Jurassic World evolution model does, and that's good. The only criticism I have is, and this is not a Megalodon specific thing, I don't like the weird color blotches that a lot of these skins get. Like, if I had a wish for Jurassic World Evolution 3, which with our luck we're going to be covering for a long time, I would hope that they don't make it that like a bunch of the skins are just weird kind of patternless blotches of color that don't really seem to match what we see in most animals nowadays. Some of these animals have it worse than others. Like some have vertical banding or horizontal striping that feels biological, but others just kind of look tie-dyed. And I think that the striping and spotting on this animal's model just looks a little bit... It looks a little bit not right. But again, I can just breed them without that. It's fine.
Yeah.
So that's my S tier. And I'll let you go ahead now, Scott.
If anything, I'll just say that like the striping and spotting to me really looks like just whale shark patterns. So like that's what I read it as. So it's like, hey, they gave it the pattern of the other big shark that has patterns. But anyways, I will give this an S right off the bat. I think that this is one of, if not my favorite depiction of Megalodon. And it is distinct enough. They did the thing that's always hard with Megalodon of actually making it look distinct from a bunch of other sharks, which is hard with sharks because especially a lot of the ones that are doing relatively similar things kind of look very similar to especially untrained eyes. But I really like what they're doing here. It's as Dalton said, it's obviously informed by some of the more recent things. My only gripes with it are basically gameplay gripes, in that like I kind of hate that it eats the fish, like the tiny little tuna things in the aquarium, because they're so comically small in comparison that I'm like, I do not think that a Megalodon would even expend the energy to try to eat. It's going to do it right now, and it's going to look ridiculous to try to eat one of these things. Like, we know that Megalodon was cutting whales in half with its teeth. Like, we have whale vertebrae that are literally shorn in half. And it's like, yeah, did Megalodon sign it and say Megalodon was here and I did this? No, but like, what else is cutting whales in half? Like, it's bonkers. Like, I like that it eats from the shark feeder. If it didn't, then like, what the fuck is the shark feeder doing in the game? I wish that they had a whale feeder for it, but I think that would be too awful.
You have to breed archaic misticete whales and hang them over the
No, it only eats Shonosaurus. It'll, like, you have to get something whale-sized for it to hunt. But yeah, no, it's gorgeous. It's lovely. Like, I will probably, when I put this in my park, not have a pattern on it.
Yeah.
But I'm not pressed by this subtle striping and spotting. Alex.
I'm just thinking about sharks.
Okay. Yeah.
It's James is correct in one way.
Thank you.
It does not. I'm going to give it a very high S, but it does not get little guy. It does not have the little guy energy. But it is very good, and I like it a lot. So high S. I would like to use this moment to bring it back to James's stated dislike of sharks.
Wait a minute. I just stated like of sharks.
He said he
You
hated
slander
them.
me.
He's like, I don't like sharks. You know who else doesn't like sharks?
Who?
Any guesses?
Is it the
No?
Is it the machine elves?
Mechanical
No,
elves.
the machine elves are friends of all
Friends to
things.
all.
No. Donald Trump is obsessed with sharks.
Is he
And he
really?
is terrified of them.
Oh yeah, he is. That's right.
He constantly talks about, he's like, we got to get rid of all the sharks. And he would never donate to a charity that gave money to shark charities. He's said cool things like, I dislike sharks second to only my haters in the world. So I would like to say that cringe of you not to like sharks.
I like sharks. Alex, I am editing this video. I can play my own clip again where I said I generally don't like marine animals that much, but I like sharks.
Oh, sure.
I have a general disinterest in ocean life. I like sharks in general, though.
Now you say you grew up in New York, right?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Got real estate in the family?
There's a home.
Okay.
There's a home.
And how do we know you're not, in fact, the 45th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump?
Well,
No,
I was going to
sure.
say you could check my heels for bone spurs that would prevent me from serving in Vietnam, but I don't think you're going to find them on him either.
Okay, it's an S. Dalton.
It's an S for you. Okay, I make it no secret that I love Megalodon. I love sharks. Sharks are awesome. They like when I was a kid, my dream was either paleontology or sharks. My dream was
Shame
never
you
shark
can't merge
paleontology
those. I was about to. Yeah.
because I recognize that it's so hard. Whoa. No, I have always loved Megalodon. I've always been fascinated by it. As I did read the Meg books, I have seen the Meg movies. I will make a statement now, actually, that I think needs to be made when we talk about Megalodon. Megalodon is extinct. Megalodon is not around anymore.
Yeah, we never said that.
People will champion the idea that maybe it survived in the deep sea. There's nothing for it to eat down there. It was not a deep sea animal. It had tropical nearshore nurseries. It relied on an ecosystem that does not exist in a climate that changed too rapidly for it. It is extinct, and I'm very sad about that because I want it to not be extinct so very badly because I want to see one. But alas, it's extinct. I'm a huge fan of Megalodon, and I'm a huge fan of this design. I think it captures what I like about Megalodon in that it's an interesting big shark. Like Scott said, they make it look distinct. Like this doesn't immediately just be like, I'm not like, oh, it's a great white shark or oh, it's a salmon shark or whatever. Like it is its own design. And they also didn't fall into like traps that a lot of people do when trying to make Megalodon like distinct and prehistoric looking of like giving it too many gills or giving it fin spines that it probably didn't have. Doing all kinds of like extra filigree that really kind of ruins the design of a lot of Megalodons. They didn't like pack its mouth full of way too many teeth. Like they were very reserved in their approach. They said, we're going to make this and we're going to make it look really good. And I'm for that reason, because it's so important to me, I'm giving it H tier. Also because when you look at it head on, it is kind of just a little guy. And like there's no malice in its eyes. Right? Like this is a friend to all except for whales, but I'm not a whale. So H.
Okay. Well, I think that pretty solidly puts it in high S.
Okay. And with that, I would say it's time to spin the wheel, but it's not. It's time for a Troceraptor, which has been buffed twice.
It's what it deserves.
Also, to all of our friends and viewers who watch this on the day it releases, I have 36 hours to record, to edit the entire thing and export it. So we're going to see how good it is. If the video feels a little rough, it's because I didn't work that hard on it. That's how it be.
The lights are fading, guys.
All right. While Alex runs out of the back rooms, I'm going to be telling everybody who our patrons are. Because without our patrons...
The lights have been restored.
Without our patrons, we would not really be able to keep doing this. Especially wouldn't be able to keep going with such a intense release schedule. We really thank our patrons for all of the support they give us. We simply could not do it without them. And
thank you.
So our most generous patrons include Benjamin Seepser, nickname, original username Philip Fico, AK92, Christopher Bellis Jones, Aaron Anderson, Adam Mullos, Camphibia, Dan O'Kyrus, Dinodom, King Zashu, Max Ironpaw, Pythonic, Swamp Ape Science, Wanderer, and Wheat. Thank you guys so much for your support. Thank you to all of our patrons whose names will be in the credits at the end of this video. We're coming up on a year now since we've started our Patreon, and I am immensely proud of the community of people that we've amassed in there. Our patron-only Discord server is a really, really wonderful place and community. It's the kind of thing that part of me wishes I had had access to when I was a young person interested in paleontology.
Oh, God, same.
The other part of me is happy that I was not on any social media until I was in college, because it left my frontal lobe a little bit more time to mature.
Yeah. Oh, if you're under 20, your brains are going to be real interesting in a few years.
Yeah. But that said, this Discord, absolutely wonderful, positive, supportive, kind community. And I'm really proud to be one of its moderators. So thank you all very much. We will see you next week in a video that we recorded so long ago about a Troceraptor.
Indeed.
Thanks for your time.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.